shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 7th of November. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Trump, the aftershocks. World leaders meet in Budapest today, where top of the agenda is responding to the election of Donald Trump. As much of the political and media establishment, of course, goes into meltdown.
Donald Trump has won the 2024 election, and he'll be president again for 4 more years, or 8, or 12, or whatever.
And today, the Bank of England announces it has voted for a second cut in interest rates from 5% to 4.75%.
And we'll catch up with our royal reporter in South Africa on the final day of Prince William's visit. Will the prince's brother lose his American green card under the new Trump regime? Well, it's a busy day today, of course, and news just in, as you heard in those headlines. Interest rates have been cut. It follows more market good news that we've heard over the last 24 hours, at least good news in terms of stocks and shares in the United States of America.
I'm surprised they've gone for a cut. I thought they might be a little hesitant to do so. You know, there are inflationary pressures, new government. Lots going on.
Well,
I thought maybe they'd just hold, but good news for mortgage holders.
They were hesitant, was it 2 times ago when they held and they could have cut? I think the pressure to cut had been so much. And again, 2.75, still, 4.75, still quite a...
That'd be nice.
It would be nice if it was 2 point... remortgage. But no, I mean, it was almost inevitable. I think the more questions now are what happens next? Do we continue on this trajectory? But of course, it's not just the economic aftershocks of Tuesday's goings-on. It's, of course, those political aftershocks.
Have you recovered?
My sleep schedule is completely out of whack. I slept right through this show yesterday. Thanks so much to Miriam Cates for standing in. And then I couldn't get to sleep in time last night because I'm basically running on American time at this point.
Oh, no. Well, hopefully he'll stay awake for the rest of this show. We've got 3 hours to get through, Tom.
No, but strong cup of tea.
Some of the reaction has been wild. I'm sure you've seen some British journalists, but also over in the States, the idea that Donald Trump is now going to be a dictator for life.
Yes, there was this meme. It just keeps going. I mean, for one thing, I mean, he is one of the oldest presidents in United States history now, only superseded by Joe Biden.
He's saying so even if he wanted to be a dictator, he wouldn't be around for long.
I don't think he'd be able to. But also, of course, one of the things about this election is he has set up now this very clear MAGA succession. You've got J.D. Vance there, who is clearly going to be one of the lead candidates in the Republican primary in 4 years' time.
Likeable guy.
It's easier to see how sort of the Trump succession happens within the Republican Party now than it was beforehand.
Yes, so how's Keir Starmer and David Lammy going to deal with this all? gbnews.com/your say. Please do get in touch, but let's get the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. Well, as you've just been hearing, that breaking news that interest rates have been cut by 0.25 percentage points, only the second reduction in almost 4 years. The Bank of England cut rates from 5% to 4.75%. And the bank cut rates for the first time in August when inflation fell to its 2% target. The rate was then held in September as the bank wanted to see further evidence that inflation would be sustainably lower. More on this breaking story as we get it. Sir Keir Starmer is set to sign a deal with Balkan nations to target people smuggling gangs as he heads to Hungary for the 5th EU summit. 46 European leaders will discuss issues including economic security as well as migration concerns. The Prime Minister will announce new UK plans to clamp down on organised immigration crime abroad by signing new agreements with Serbia, North Macedonia and Kosovo. Meanwhile, the summit will also address Donald Trump's win as the bloc focuses on how to accommodate the country's 47th president. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride praised the special relationship between the UK and the US, and he also told GB News the government needs to take defence spending more seriously.
Definitely in an era now where the peace dividend that we had after the end of the Cold War has sadly come to an end, and we're in much more dangerous territory. You can see that around the world, not just with Ukraine and Russia, but where China is in respect of Taiwan and North Korea and Iran and so on. And what we therefore need to do is to make sure we have that strong commitment to defence. Now, as a party, of course, we set out a clear path to increasing our expenditure on defence to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And what we really need to see from this government is a similar clarity of commitment.
Sir Keir Starmer has telephoned Donald Trump to offer what Downing Street described as hearty congratulations for his win. Sir Keir said he looked forward to working closely with the president-elect across all areas of the special relationship. The Prime Minister also reflected on the crisis in the Middle East and underscored the need for regional stability. And the UK has announced 56 new sanctions against Russia, including against Salisbury poisoning suspect Denis Sergeev. It's the biggest Russia sanctions package for 18 months in a signal of support for Ukraine. The Foreign Office says the sanctions will directly target the supply of goods to Russia's military and constrain vital resources crucial to conduct Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 6 minutes past midday. And as expected, the Bank of England has voted to reduce interest rates from 5% to 4.75%.
So are they on the way down? Whilst the decision will make the cost of borrowing money a little bit cheaper, it will likely reduce the returns available to savers.
Well, let's get the latest on this with GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Because, Olivia, markets were expecting this, but of course there is fear about the future trajectory. But I do suppose, on the other hand, the election of Trump, the budget, it hasn't changed those sort of expectations.
Well, as Emily said in the introduction there, in a way it's quite surprising that the Bank of England has decided to lower rates, given what has happened over the last couple of weeks. Rachel Reeves's budget doesn't show good indications of growth in the medium to long-term future, and it is likely that inflationary pressures will stay thanks to that budget. The election of Donald Trump, too, although it might be very good for inflation in the US, could be very bad for inflation over here, because because, as we know, Donald Trump is keen on protectionism. He's keen on high tariffs. He's not likely to agree a free trade deal with the United Kingdom, particularly under a Labour government. There's quite a lot of animosity between him and Keir Starmer. So actually, you could end up in a situation where goods from America end up being far more expensive, and that could lead to an inflationary spiral. But none of that was factored into this interest rates decision because the timing of it just didn't work. Although it is likely that Bank of England monetary policy deciders knew Rachel Reeves's budget plans before they made their decision, they won't have 100% been able to factor all of that in before she actually made the budget decision. So the big question now really is what happens. There are a couple of members of the Monetary Committee. It's a 9-strong committee. There are a couple of members who are really holding out firm for keeping interest rates pretty much as they are. But at the moment, they are in the minority. Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, still wants to keep interest rates going down. So I think what we can expect to see over the next sort of year is interest rates slowly going down, much slower than they climbed just a few years ago. But Goldman Sachs is currently predicting that by September 2025, UK interest rates should be about 3%, which is very good news for those of us whose 5-year fixed deals are expiring in September 2025.
Olivia, you speak as if that might be you. I won't make you reveal that personal, but yes, lots of people are on very high mortgage rates, very expensive monthly payments, of course. Olivia, could it be that this decision had already been made by the Bank of England before the US election fallout and before some of the changes that the government have made in their recent budget?
Yes, I think that is the most likely scenario. That, I mean, they probably would have gone for it anyway because, there are lots and lots of economists who actually say that those high interest rates should have been unwound a little longer ago. And so there was a lot of pressure on the Bank of England to keep interest rates coming down. And of course, they are coming down still very, very slowly. This is something like the second or third time that interest rates have gone down in 3 or 4 years. So yes, it's a sort of bold move, if you like, from the Bank of England, but it's not a huge move. The US is moving faster than the UK on this. And of course, it is necessary to get some of that pressure off mortgage holders. As you say, Emily, there are people who are on really, really expensive long-term contracts, and that puts its own pressures on the economy too. So there are lots of people who will be breathing a sigh of relief today that interest rates are slowly beginning to unwind, although, of course, there could be inflationary pressures that come with that.
Can't celebrate too soon. Olivia Utley, thank you very much indeed, GBNews political correspondent. Well, hopefully the little drop in interest rates might help with the old growth, might get money moving around a bit more.
Might do indeed, but of course, I mean, they are still acting as a squeeze on the amount of money that people can spend, and they will do. I mean, we're not going to see interest rates come down to the historic lows that they were at immediately after the financial crisis or during COVID. And so there's still going to be that sort of drag on whatever we do.
Yeah, it's hard to remember how low they once were.
Yeah, 0.5, 0.25. Another world.
That'll be a cheap mortgage. Anyway, in other news, America continues to digest Donald Trump's return to the White House.
After beating the Democrat candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris, his fans could be seen absolutely milking his victory.
But the same couldn't be said for US talk show hosts.
Many of whom struggled to hold back their emotions as they reacted to the US presidential election.
Donald Trump has won the 2024 election, and he'll be president again for 4 more years, or 8, or 12, or whatever. And this is cool. The first person convicted of felony charges to assume the presidency. So that's not bad. When I was in grade school, they always told us anyone could grow up to be president, but they didn't say literally anyone.
Jimmy, what are you doing?
I'm packing.
Packing? Are you going on vacation?
No, I'm not going on vacation. I'm leaving the country.
Why are you leaving the country?
I can't stay for another 4 years of this. Who knows what he's gonna do?
If you watch the show regularly, I'm guessing you're not doing great. Yeah, me neither. Well, it happened. Again. After a bizarre and vicious campaign fueled by a desperate need not to go to jail, Donald Trump has won the 2024 election.
Same old jokes repackaged, isn't it, really?
There is this consistent meme in America that the only reason Donald Trump was running for president was so that he didn't go to prison. You'd have thought that there were some other motivating factors for someone becoming the president of the United States other than, you know, not being incarcerated.
Yeah, but there is going to be a lot of A-list celebrity refugees to this country, apparently, who can't stand to be living under Trump's America. This is including America Ferrera, who is the star of Ugly Betty. Apparently she's coming over to the UK because she doesn't like Trump. Anyway, should we speak to GBNews presenter Stephen Dixon? A surprise appearance on our show. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Pleasure to be here.
So, are you recovered from the shenanigans, the overnight?
From the shock. Yeah, well, look, it was a great night. What a fantastic night we had covering all of this. But, again, a surprise in a way, because those polls, sort of just the day or two before the election, were hinting that Kamala could swing it, and then to see it evolve as the night went on, I just thought was absolutely fascinating.
It certainly was, and of course everyone says that this was a tight election, a 50-50 election, but sort of it's almost when you go through the motions of, oh, this is so tight, this is so close, it's another thing to sort of see it fall down on one of those sides or the other. It's almost like a lot of people weren't mentally prepared for this.
Which is extraordinary, actually, when you've got two people running for a job. One of them is going to win, and the other one isn't. I mean, you have to... This is what I find very difficult to get my head around, and it is a bit like the Brexit scenario, where somebody has to lose, and you have to be able to accept the winner. Don't you? Whether you voted for them or not, whether you like them or not, is almost becomes irrelevant when you're going through a huge democratic process. It's the whole point of having it.
Apparently, the Democrats are turning on George Clooney because he was one of the people who said they needed to ditch Biden. So now everyone's turning on him. They're fighting each other. Who's to blame? Who's to blame? Who's to blame?
But it wouldn't have been any different, would it, if Biden had still been standing? I mean, it would have been... You would have thought it would have been worse for the Democrats.
Well, I think they're just trying to find something to pin it on. It couldn't be that people just thought that Donald Trump was a better candidate.
Well, this is the thing. It becomes the question, was this an election of personality? Was this an election of character? Or actually did Americans disregard that in the main? Did people look past the particular individual characteristics or attributes of these characters and look at the fundamentals? People felt poorer than they did 4 years ago.
Greg Swenson from Republican Overseas UK was saying to us weeks and weeks and weeks ago, if Trump... Because, I mean, he's been a little bit critical of Trump on the stump, as it were, and that when he does get a bit nasty and a bit personal, because that did seem to turn people off, he said all Trump needs to do is focus on policy, because he wins on policy. And I think that is ultimately what it boils down to. People are unhappy with immigration, they're unhappy with how much money's in their wallet, and you need policy to sort that out.
No, it is fascinating to see that actually most people, and it's so hard for a lot of people to comprehend this, people who spend most of the day watching television news, who sat up all night watching the election results, or indeed who live and breathe this stuff, who read the papers. I mean, most of the country, but most of the UK and most of the US doesn't spend their life engrossed in politics, and I think this is perhaps why it always feels like it's so dislocated for so many people. Because I mean, we love discussing whether some comedian at some event made an off-colour joke about garbage in the ocean. Does 95% of the country actually care that someone tangentially linked to one candidate said something that actually you might expect anyone to say at a Christmas family dinner? You know, I mean,
that would never happen at my Christmas family dinner.
Return to the real world.
Well, this is the thing, but it's why you need to get out and about and meet real people, isn't it? I mean, I think this is what a lot of celebrities, in a sense as well, a lot of politicians, a lot of reporters miss, that you need to get out there and deal with real people. I mean, I've been just talking to people about, this race, just when I've been at home and out and about, and it's surprising. People you wouldn't expect saying, if I was in the States, I'd be voting for Trump, or I'd be voting for Harris, whichever which way it was, and you could never predict it.
No.
Sometimes it was a bit of a shock. But, that's how the world works, doesn't it? And, we don't all just follow this weird news agenda.
Yes, we did speak to the pollster, James Johnson, who was one of the only people that seemed to get it almost perfectly right. Stephen, thank you so much for coming onto the show, and you did fantastic coverage. It was very engaging. I was hooked.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the things when you actually see it play out in reality, translating this sort of ethereal sense that, oh, it's 50-50. I think a lot of people went through the motions saying, oh, it's 50-50, as if that's sort of you don't then follow through. Well, actually, that means that it could be Trump. And in the end, it was. And looking actually around the world at how people have all been responding to this becomes fascinating, because this is, of course, an event that will have huge implications for Europe as well. And today, meeting in Budapest are the European political community, those over 50 leaders of EU countries and non-EU countries. Our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is, of course, over there in Hungary. Shall we get the very latest with the political analyst at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, Ronald Granieri. Ronald, thanks so much for joining us. These political leaders will all be talking Trump.
Oh, absolutely. They'll be talking Trump. I assume they had been prepared for this possibility. I mean, following your discussion, it was 50-50. And basically, if every state election is 50-50, but everyone breaks one way or the other, you get this result. They should have been ready for this possibility. They might have wanted a different possibility. We don't know. But they're definitely going to be talking about Trump.
And how do you suppose the relationship will go between Keir Starmer, the Labour Prime Minister, and Donald Trump?
This is an excellent question. I was wondering about this. My one smart aleck comment is that, of course, in the United States, red is the color of the Republican Party. So if Keir Starmer makes sure to always show up with a nice red background, that might help a lot with the visuals of their relationship. I mean, I do wonder. I mean, as you see, we got a picture of Mr. Farage there that, clearly Donald Trump doesn't have any personal affinity with Keir Starmer or with the Labour Party. I think that in general, a lot of American partners and allies overseas, what they're concerned about is that if Trump is serious about his particular vision of America first, no particular partner can expect to get particularly special treatment. Trump doesn't believe any relationship is special. He thinks every relationship is a negotiation.
I mean, Ronald, Labour ministers are failing to distance themselves from previous comments made about Donald Trump. I can't get my head around this. They're one of our biggest trading partners, the biggest single trading partner. Can't you just put the Nazi comments, the KKK sympathising comments, the misogynist comments, all of these, just say, you know what, don't believe that anymore, let's move on. I just don't understand it, Ronald.
I mean, that is exactly the challenge that every time Democratic partners deal with each other, right, is when there is an election, and if the other party wins, you have to decide what to do. I mean, we can say in Prime Minister Starmer's favor that he was very quick to send a message of congratulations and very quick to say, I hope we can work together on important issues. I mean, that's the kind of objective approach that should happen here, right? Following other countries' politics is sometimes like watching football, right? You decide what team to cheer for. But in the end, once governments are in place, the governing has to start. And also then the practical relationships have to be worked out. And there are a lot of very serious questions that are going to have to be worked out across the Atlantic, right? In the special relationship between the US and UK, in the relationship between the US and the European Union. Trump's approach to trade has been different from any American president over the past, I would say 80 years. The bias in the United States has always been in favor of free trade. Trump sees trade from what almost call a mercantilist perspective, right? As he believes that it's about maintaining as much power and wealth within the United States. And that attitude towards trade, which does have historical value, people can argue it, can spell trouble, even for relationships with friendly nations. If you're talking about just saying, I don't want any imports, then that's going to hurt the imports from your friends as well as from your adversary.
It'll be absolutely fascinating to see if this campaign promise of 10% minimum tariffs on every country around the world is actually carried out, or if there will indeed be some carve-outs there. Negotiations, no doubt, will go on. But political analyst at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, Ronald Granieri, thanks so much for joining us and talking through that.
OK, well, in the last few minutes, Cheshire Police have confirmed that Labour MP Mike Amesbury has been charged with assault following an incident in Frodsham. So, yeah, that's just breaking right now in the last few minutes. Cheshire Police have confirmed that the Labour MP Mike Mike Amesbury has been charged with assault following an incident in Frodsham.
And of course, Mike Amesbury has had the whip suspended and has his membership of the Labour Party suspended as well. That happened earlier after the incident.
OK, well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. Yes, the Prime Minister is in Hungary speaking to European leaders, and it's Trump, Trump, Trump on the agenda.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Catherine Richards and Jake Singleton-Hill featured on the reality show Love is Blind.
Well, Catherine and Jake are joining us now in the studio for Saturday Morning Live. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is perhaps not the end result that people might have thought that they'd be seeing at this point, because you were both on the show, but you didn't fall in love in the pods, did you?
No, we didn't. I rejected him.
You guys look great together.
Yeah.
Very happy as well. It seemed like you guys were really strong, and it almost seemed like Freddie, after he admitted to you that he'd cheated in the past.
I actually respected the fact that he told me up front. I didn't even want to have that conversation, obviously. That was a conversation that we got told to talk about. And I respected his decision, but I think he felt that I was holding this grudge towards him that she really doesn't like, and which was not, and he knew this, because off camera we had many conversations where I was like, thank you for owning up, like, we can just move on from this. But if anything, I think he just felt guilty the whole entire time, and he put that on me, which is fine, but yeah, there's obviously a lot that people don't see.
So for viewers who don't know, Love is Blind is where you go and seek love and romance, but you don't see who you're speaking to, right?
No.
So, Jake, why did you go on the show?
My parents actually met in a very similar way. So my stepdad was texting my mum that he'd basically stolen the number off of a friend because the friend had met my mum in Blackpool, and they were texting for like 6 months. They'd never met. So that premise of how they got together and the marriage that they had was stunning. And to build a relationship not based on looks before you met, I just found that just incredible.
So do you believe in that concept? Is it lust or love at first sight?
It's weird.
It's a bit of both.
I think, it's definitely a bit of both. And I always say, as you get older, your looks will change, but your personality will stay the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 12:26. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is in Budapest today for the European Community Summit. He's expected to sign deals with several Balkan countries as part of his plans to smash the people smuggling gangs.
Well, it comes as Europe continues to digest this news. Of course, the news that is dominating the week, that Donald Trump will soon be returning to the White House in January, and what that could mean for, well, the world and particularly the European continent.
Yes, I imagine European leaders are divided over whether this is a positive for Europe.
Divided, I think, about 52-2, maybe?
Should we go over to Budapest now and speak to GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster? Catherine, tell us exactly what's going on in Budapest, and is it true that Donald Trump is right at the top of the agenda?
Yes, of course. Good afternoon, Tom and Emily.
Donald Trump, that name is everywhere, wherever you go. I switched on the TV this morning. It was the first word that I heard and saw. He is top of the agenda everywhere. Now, of course, this is the European political community meeting here in Budapest. It's the 5th meeting, and it's the European countries, including the EU, but also lots of countries not in the EU. Vladimir Zelensky is here, Ursula von der Leyen is here, Mark Rutte, the new NATO chief, is here. And although we're in the Pukas Stadium, I don't know if you can see, but it's a beautiful, beautiful sunny day here. But I would say the mood in Europe is anything but sunny. Now, Viktor Orban, as you were probably alluding to then, is very rare here in the fact that he's absolutely delighted with Trump's victory. He's a friend of Donald Trump, not unkeen on Vladimir Putin either, it's worth saying. But that is a minority view, because despite the fact that Emmanuel Macron and our own Prime Minister Keir Starmer were very quick to congratulate Donald Trump and to get on the phone. Volodymyr Zelensky also very quick to get on the phone. There is real concern here about what this means for Europe, both in terms of security and in terms of trade. In terms of trade, if he does go and slap these huge tariffs on other countries and sending goods into the US, that could have a profound economic consequence around the world, on Europe particular. And then, of course, NATO and Ukraine, real worry. If Donald Trump really means what he says about ending the conflict in Ukraine, what that means, I think it's no coincidence at all that the news on UK sanctions on Russia being launched today, that piece of news has come out at this point, keen to put a sense of solidarity across at a time that many in Europe are very concerned, because they just do not know what Donald Trump will do, because he is nothing if not unpredictable.
There is a theory, Catherine, that strangely this election of Trump might actually push European integration closer together, that the European Union might create an army, that the European Union might try and do more things alone, and indeed it might accelerate this idea that there should be a United States of Europe if the United States itself can't be relied upon. Do you get a sense there at the European Political Community Summit that actually some of these leaders see this as an opportunity to push Europe together?
Well, there may be amongst some, but there'll be plenty of others who would want no part in that at all. And I think the very fact that this European political community was summoned into existence by the fact that Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2022, it's not all about the EU. It's about the EU and all the other countries, but they are going to have to stand on their own 2 feet a lot more than they have previously. They're already doing that a bit. And it's fair to say that Europe, for a very long time, did not pay its way, did they? I mean, Donald Trump was correct in calling out many European countries, Britain not being one of them, in simply paying nothing like the 2% on defence spending they were supposed to pay for a very long time, while being very happy for America to pick up the bill. Now, Donald Trump has made it very clear previously that he is having none of that, and it's already resulted in European countries waking up, and in fact a lot of them are spending a lot more on defence, but it does feel like we're in a quite different world going forward.
Thank you very much indeed, Catherine Forster in Budapest for us, our political correspondent. Thank you. I mean, Germany's got a lot of problems at the moment. There's quite a few unpopular politicians in Europe, aren't there, at the moment? I'm just reading what Emmanuel Macron's been saying. He's saying Europeans must not delegate their security to the Americans forever. We need to defend our interests against the United States and China. Fighting talk.
It wouldn't be a stretch for European countries to spend money on defence if the European Union had any money? I mean, let's go through these in turn, OK? For European countries, they haven't been spending on defence because they rely on American defence. They haven't been fracking any gas in Europe. That's banned in most countries in Europe. They have been shutting down nuclear power stations. Guess what? Then they import liquefied natural gas that has been fracked in, guess where? The United States. So that's giving money to the United States for energy, relying on the United States for defence as well. And then what's in everyone's pockets in Europe? What's this? It's American tech. All the European tech companies have really declined in the last 2 decades. All of our laptops are American tech. All of the websites that we go on, I mean, the Googles, the Facebooks, whether it's Amazon or anything else, it's all America. It all happens in America.
Macron seems to think that, you know, they can take control of their own security. They can fight back against China and the United States and their hegemony and all of this. Europe will be strong on its own. How much money is Macron willing to spend on defence, I wonder?
But at what point do Europeans sit up and realise, why is it that America is so rich? Why is it that America has all the tech companies, all the space companies? Why is it that America has so much money that it can spend on things like defence? Could it be that it doesn't ban energy extraction, that it doesn't ban the basic tenets of market economics? Could it be that actually the Americans for the last 60, 70 years have been onto something with this idea of free market capitalism, and that actually this European model of huge rights to labour unions and not extracting any of our own natural resources, that perhaps actually at some point that puts you at a disadvantage?
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Have you come up for air?
Just about.
I do agree with what you're saying. And, you know, Volkswagen are even moving out of Germany, or at least some of their production. It's not going great. Those energy costs are far too high. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. Yes, we're going to be talking about colour-blind casting. This relates to a new drama series where they're depicting Tudors as they never were. That's after the news headlines.
Emily, thank you very much. The top stories. Well, that breaking news that Cheshire Police says MP Mike Amesbury has been charged with assault following an incident in Frodsham. A video had emerged of him appearing to punch a man to the ground. According to police, the 55-year-old is set to appear in Magistrates' Court at a later date. They also say the charge relates to reports of an assault on a 45-year-old man in Frodsham, which was reported to police on the 26th of October. And more on this story as we can bring it to you. Elsewhere, that other breaking news that the interest rate's been cut by 0.25 percentage points, only the second reduction in almost 4 years. The Bank of England cut the interest rate from 5% to 4.75%. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says we need to make sure inflation stays close to target, so we can't cut interest rates too quickly or by too much. The bank cut rates for the first time in August when inflation fell to its 2% target. It was then held in September as the bank wanted to see further evidence that inflation would be sustainably lower. We now know in the last few moments that the pound got a boost after the interest rate was cut to 4.75%. Sir Keir Starmer is set to sign a deal with Balkan nations to target people smuggling gangs as he heads to Hungary for the 5th EU summit. 46 European leaders will discuss issues including economic security as well as migration concerns. The Prime Minister will announce new UK plans to clamp down on organised immigration crime abroad by signing new agreements with Serbia, North Macedonia and Kosovo. Meanwhile, the summit will also address Donald Trump's win at the bloc, as the bloc focuses on how to accommodate the country's 47th president. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride praised the special relationship between the UK and the US. He also told GB News the government needs to take defence spending more seriously.
Definitely in an era now where the peace dividend that we had after the end of the Cold War has sadly come to an end, and we're in much more dangerous territory. You can see that around the world, not just with Ukraine and Russia, but where China is in respect of Taiwan and North Korea and Iran and so on. And what we therefore need to do is to make sure we have that strong commitment to defence. Now, as a party, of course, we set out a clear path to increasing our expenditure on defence to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And what we really need to see from this government is a similar clarity of commitment.
And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More news from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some bright spells out there today, but for most it's another gloomy afternoon with some patchy drizzle, especially across Western Hills, where there'll also be hill fog. We've got high pressure, but that high is sitting to the east, and a southerly wind is bringing, again, extensive low cloud and some dreary conditions. But for parts of North Devon, North and West Wales, Northern Scotland, perhaps South East Scotland, the cloud will be broken up by the hills, and as a result we'll see some sunshine making an appearance, especially northern Scotland, and where that happens temperatures could reach 18 Celsius. Otherwise, under the cloud we're going to see temperatures of 13 to 15 Celsius generally. The most reliable bright spots and clear spells as we go into the evening will be northern Scotland. Otherwise, a lot of cloud covering the hills across Scotland itself, some drizzle out there. Likewise for Northern Ireland and Northern England. A hole in the cloud, perhaps making an appearance at times for North and West Wales, as well as the north coast of Devon and Cornwall. But for most, it is, again, a cloudy start to the night, and as a result, a relatively mild night. Now, we're going to see the cloud come and go for northern Scotland overnight. A few frost and fog patches where we get clear spells, but for the vast majority, a grey start to Friday and a mild start with temperatures in the mid to high single figures. Some patchy rain making an appearance into the far northwest of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well as we begin Friday. A strengthening breeze in the west, that breeze coming from the south and southeast. So again, a few holes in the cloud for North Wales, Northern England and Northern Scotland as well. And on the whole, it's going to feel a bit colder compared with Thursday, with temperatures of 10 to 13 Celsius. But again, mid-teens where we get some sunshine.
The latest GB News travel.
Long delays as a closure on the southbound side of the M6 continues due to emergency repairs. The closure is 33 for Lancaster South through to the Broughton interchange at junction 32. Delays are to A6 through Hollins Lane. The A1 as we head to Hertfordshire, the A1M northbound is slow with a lane closure due to a police incident from junction 7 for Stevenage South through to Stevenage at junction 8. The M4 in Wiltshire in both directions, a lane closure to barrier repairs between 16 for Swindon West, though traffic is coping well. Traffic also coping well for the westbound side of the M4 in Bridgend. There is a lane closure to a broken down van after Pencoed at junction 35. For now, that's your very latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
OK, welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain. It's now 12:40. Now, the BBC's new season of Wolf Hall, The Mirror and the Light, has ignited a debate over its diverse casting choices.
Yes, the director, Peter Kosminski, defends this so-called colourblind casting, emphasising talent over the physical resemblance of individuals to historical figures, arguing that this approach reflects modern values.
OK, well, let's find out what our guest makes of this. Well, we're joined by historian and author Tony McMahon. Now, Tony, this happens all the time, doesn't it, when it comes to casting? People always have opinions on who should play what. Now, in this case, they've decided that it doesn't matter that they're representing the Tudor era, that anything goes, really, when it comes to casting. What do you make of it?
Well, you see, I don't actually have a problem with black people, Asian people, LGBT people playing Tudors. In fact, I think it's a good thing if they want to play Tudors or Shakespearean characters, Dickensian characters, because it's part of us, you know, that is us, we're Britain today. And I think people can get very wound up on this topic. You know, Anne Boleyn isn't black, you know, and Henry VIII isn't a supermodel, if you go back to Jonathan Rhys-Meyers playing him. I mean, but we never say, you know, to play Henry VIII, you've got to be morbidly obese and suffer from 10 diseases and have to be winched up the stairs before you can be considered for the role. So why do we make it an issue, really, if black people play?
But do you think we'll ever get to the stage where a white person could play a black character? Because this is the thing. I think this is what winds people up, because you hear a lot of people come on and say, oh, a gay character has to be played by a gay actor, a black role has to be played by a black actor. But they're quite. But then, you know, there's diverse characters chosen for other things.
Look, I'm LGBT, and I had no problem with Michael Douglas playing Liberace and Matt Damon playing his boyfriend. I never said, oh God, no, they can't do that. They were fantastic. So I think, you know, non can play whatever. I must admit, I'm going to contradict myself now, because I would kind of draw the line. In the old days, you had Laurence Olivier blacking up to Othello. I think just from a common sense angle, we'd say probably not a good thing. And I think I'm right in saying John Wayne played Genghis Khan, and, you know, with the eyes taped back.
And now we sort of recoil at those things.
Yeah.
But I suppose they say the words colourblind casting.
Yeah.
But in reality, it is only one way, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I know some people, for example, took that musical Hamilton. They said, well, hang on a moment, you're deliberately cast. And, of course, it was a conscious decision to make it very much an African-American casting with all the musical references.
But with Hamilton, I think, to some extent, it makes sense, because they're telling this immigrant story. Hamilton, of course, was of Scottish ancestry, but he was a foreigner in the land of New York, and sort of was emphasising how different he was from some other people, and how that was a sort of immigrant story, which is sort of a clever sort of twist, I suppose, on the story. But with the Tudors, I think I'm right in saying the early seasons of Wolf Hall, they didn't do any of this. They didn't do this extra diversity in the casting. And now for this season, they've changed that, and they will be doing it. And we'll be seeing a lot more faces that you wouldn't normally see in Tudor England. Of course, there were some black people in Tudor England, but they wouldn't have been titular characters, they wouldn't have been high society. It would have been an oddity for people to see people of different races out and about, because people didn't move as much. Why do you think Wolf Hall has suddenly changed its policy?
I think it could be partly the Bridgerton effect. I mean, you know, that we've had black characters, obviously, in Bridgerton, although Bridgerton does kind of play with race quite consciously, doesn't it? So I think one of the problems is we can't replicate Tudor England exactly as it was. Otherwise, we'd all be walking around with rickets and you know, God knows what, you know, and we'd all be dead at 25, you know. So we are a different society, and we have to let everybody have a go. And I think one of the interesting things is there are plenty of black Britons who love Shakespeare, who love Dickens, who love the Tudors. And I think to say, oh, you can't come because we think that in 1530 you went around, you know. I mean, you can't do that. But you've got to let everybody have a go.
I do always think, when I look at sort of Tudor or Elizabethan Shakespearean things, always look at the teeth. Why do they always have such nice teeth? These people didn't brush their teeth. Did Queen Elizabeth have wooden teeth? No. Wooden teeth.
Well, look, I mean, I've got boomer teeth. They're a bit jagged. You've got millennial teeth. They're lovely.
Oh, they're not real.
The truth comes out. The truth comes out. I think there's a difference between theatre as well as on screen, isn't there, and people's attitudes. But also, I think if you're going to have colourblind casting, you have to have it, you know, for everyone. Don't you?
And also, then that becomes uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's just it's just a difficult one. Tony McMahon, thank you for helping us kind of make sense of it. Navigate this tricky one. But it is something that people will comment on, and is something that comes up time and time again. Particularly, I've heard so many progressives say, you know, it has to be a gay actor playing a gay character, it has to be a black actor playing a black actor. They have to be from exactly the same place as where they came from.
Are they then actors?
Yeah. I'm half Irish, half Portuguese. Who's going to play me?
They'd have to get exactly the right mix for you, Tony. Thank you very much.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more coming up on today's programme, including we're going to check in South Africa. Yes, Prince William is in Cape Town on his final day of his royal tour.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
We shot with the London Eye in the background, so it's quite an iconic shoot to do my cover of the Playboy magazine. So,
and you moved into the
mansion for a while. Hugh called you the British Carmen Electra. You were one of his favourites, and it's renowned for its parties, of course. Over there, you must have had a few of those. Must have been wild times.
Fantastic parties, yeah. I mean, I met some incredible people. I will forever respect him and everyone at Playboy for the love and the support.
You were on giant billboards, you were modelling for Nike, for Reebok, you're earning thousands of pounds a day.
Wow.
Absolutely like living the dream in terms of a model's lifestyle, and then things began to change.
Well, I've been living in Windsor for 4 years, and I can't get back into Windsor at the moment. The rents have gone ridiculous. I was paying $550 a month, and then the landlord just turned around one day and said I need to be paying $750. And I didn't really have a proper tenancy agreement, and I looked through it and I said, oh, can we get something in writing? And he was like, oh. So in the end, I wrote a tenancy agreement out from off the internet and I got it all signed. But then he went, if you're not going to pay the extra £250 a month, then you're going to have to move out. And I was like, well, you're going to have to give me 4 weeks. I can't just move out. I've got nowhere to go. And I think he thought he could just throw me out there and then. And he said, I've got someone that's going to move in that's going to pay £700-800 a month. So I went and got the 10, and I thought maybe this will be the way I can go for a few months or so, you know. And it was still summer a few months back when I became homeless. So, you know, I got the tent and I got all the cooking equipment and what have you from the money I got from some of the jobs I did. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go and be a free spirit for a bit, and I'm gonna have to just do my own thing. And you know what, it was the biggest mental relief to be able to have my own space. I mean, that was so liberating, absolutely.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain, and it's 12:49. Now, the Princess of Wales is doing really well and has been amazing this whole year, said her husband, as he celebrated Earthshot Prize winners.
Yes, Prince William closed the glittering awards ceremony in Cape Town by dubbing the Environmental Award as a movement for change and called on the world to join him.
While anti-monarchy protesters were also out in full force. Good grief.
I thought that shouting at people to go home was considered beyond the pale and racist, but apparently not.
No, it depends who's saying it, doesn't it, and to whom.
Well, let's cross live to our GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker in Cape Town. I hope, Cameron, that small protest hasn't overshadowed affairs.
Well, hopefully not, Tom. I think Kensington Palace is certainly hoping that it isn't. It was the most extraordinary scenes. We weren't really expecting a protest, but this kind of sporadic crowd had started to gather. I think word had spread that Prince William was on his way. He was there for a sustainable fishing engagement. But then we had this absolutely extraordinary situation where, as you saw in that clip there, this lady was really angrily shouting at Prince William, telling him to go home. She and her fellow protesters had an issue with the historic links the British monarchy has to South Africa, and therefore, in their view, Prince William not welcome in the country. But there were so many other people welcoming Prince William to South Africa, and those well-wishers started clashing with the protesters. So it really was the most extraordinary scenes. And I believe we can show you a clip of 3 people dressed in some Union flags and some interesting masks.
Love them. We love all the royals. We love the Queen. We love Princess Di. We love the boys. We've known and loved them since they were born. So we're thrilled that William is here. We're delighted.
And what about you?
Just amazing to be here and seeing him. Yeah.
And did you get to meet him when he was doing his walkabout earlier? You did?
Shake this hand. Then shook this hand.
Okay.
And mine.
And
Yeah, and yours.
yes.
Yeah. So we were thrilled. We happened to be in the right place exactly where he got off the boat.
Yeah, Prince William also was very much enjoying a braai lunch, which is a celebration of South African cuisine and culture. This is why all the protesters, while all the protesters were going on. But Prince William did manage a walkabout meeting, as you heard there, lots of members of the public who had turned out to greet him, welcoming to South Africa. He was given handmade bracelets by somebody in the crowd. So there was a kind of welcoming atmosphere, despite the very small but loud and noisy protester. He was also joined at the lunch by global superstar Billy Porter and Winnie Harlow. They are two Earthshot advocates because last night Prince William was there for his Earthshot Prize award ceremony, finding solutions to repair the planet over the next decade. 5 more finalists, each have won £1 million last night, so they're going to solutions. But Prince William is his final day here in South Africa, and this weekend he's off to Remembrance Sunday commemorations, and we'll have to wait and see if the Princess of Wales joins him.
Oh, well, fingers crossed that she does, and let's hope she's doing better and better. Cameron Walker, live from Cape Town. Thanks so much for joining us. I have to say, this protester needs to read her history.
Read a book.
It was literally the royal family, in terms of the Queen, who helped convene all the Commonwealth countries to issue a really important communique in 1986 that advocated sanctions against apartheid South Africa. I mean, it was the Commonwealth, organised through the Crown, that helped end apartheid in South Africa.
OK, so, Tom, how would you say that to this lady in 5 seconds?
I don't think you can reason with a shouting lady.
No? You wouldn't even try? You would try.
Oh, I might try.
You absolutely would try.
Well, I mean...
Can I educate you? He'd probably tell you to do one.
It is just a fact that, had it not been for the Commonwealth and their summits in the 1980s, apartheid might have lasted longer in South Africa.
Yeah. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. Don't go anywhere. We are, of course, going to be having a look at some of the reaction to Donald Trump's election over in Budapest, but also online.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Staying gloomy for the rest of today. Low cloud and drizzle extensively. Some brighter spells, mostly to the north and northwest of higher ground because of the wind direction. Technical term for this weather, anticyclonic gloom. That's where low cloud gets trapped under high pressure and it stays in the same place for days on end, and that is indeed what we're seeing, with very little sun strength this time of year to lift the cloud. So the cloudy skies continue into the evening and overnight. Some clear spells continuing across northern Scotland, perhaps North Wales. Where that happens, temperatures dipping close to freezing, a few fog patches, but otherwise it's grey skies remaining and lows of 7 to 9 Celsius. Some drizzle about first thing Friday, especially across western parts of the country. So Devon, Cornwall, Somerset, Wales. We'll see some hill fog and quite misty conditions in places. But the overcast skies continue effectively for much of the country. A few brighter spells there for northern parts of Northern Ireland and more especially northern Scotland. 1 or 2 fog patches in the glens, but they'll lift soon enough. And actually it's northern Scotland where we'll see the lowest temperatures first thing and then the highest temperatures by the afternoon because of the sunny skies. And we keep the sunshine there for northern Scotland for much of the day. We'll see some cloud breaks developing across northern England, southern Scotland, North Wales once again. But for the vast majority, we keep the low-lying cloud, and it's going to feel a bit colder, I think, compared with Thursday. So 10 to 13 Celsius, unless you get some sunshine, and then it's mid-teens. Into the evening, and it's more of the same effectively. One subtle difference is we'll see a bit more patchy rain arrive into the west, and actually we will see some rain crossing the country through the weekend, but that will clear the skies for Monday.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,000 and £25 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
What do you think?
Morning. I think we have failed young drivers as a society, and we need to train them better and train them earlier. I think that the idea of stopping them carrying passengers for 6 months is a good idea, because you've got peer pressure within a car. So yes, but I think graduated licenses are really difficult. You've got what we call the 3 E's, which is education, educating kids to drive earlier, and engineering, which is making roads better and safer, and then comes enforcement at the end of it. So I think we're failing in these two first ones, the education and the enforcement. I put my kids, all 3 of them, through a thing called Young Driver, which allows under 17s to drive on private land with ADI instructors and learn the craft of driving and all the below the dashboard stuff and hazard awareness long before they try and do this very compressed period of time to learn about driving. I think we're failing them. So I want to see it in schools, and I want to see them being taught much, much earlier.
Nobody's actually pointing the finger of blame, I think, at the young driver, but maybe young drivers don't understand how different it is. You feel you can drive, you've passed your test, and then a load of your friends get in the back, and suddenly the mood is different, the pressure on you as a driver is very different, showing off, just larking around and having a great time. Aisha, how do you feel about the fact that clearly young drivers do need to be protected almost from themselves, don't they?
Well, I do agree with some of what Quentin has just said, especially about starting early, and especially about getting young people used to the dangers of being on the road.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 7th of November. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Trump, the aftershock. World leaders meet in Budapest, where top of the agenda is responding to the election of Donald Trump, as much of the political and media establishment goes into meltdown.
Donald Trump has won the 2024 election, and he'll be president again for 4 more years, or 8, or 12, or whatever. Ha 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 ha!
And today, the Bank of England announces it has voted for a second cut in interest rates, down from 5 to 4.75%. We'll be heading to Derbyshire to find out what it means for the pennies in your pockets.
And we're going to catch up with our royal reporter in South Africa on the final day of Prince William's visit. Will the prince's brother, though, lose his American green card under Trump? Does Labour have a Trump problem, Tom?
Yes. Yes, it does. And I think, frankly, the world has a Trump problem. This isn't a comment on people living in the United States, of course, but one of Trump's big election promises was to institute tariffs against all countries in the world, friend or foe. The only way you get out of a new general tariff is by having a trade deal with the United States of America. We don't have a free trade agreement with the United States of America. The Tory government up until 2020 when Trump left office. They've done several rounds of negotiation. You've got the framework of a deal there. I've spoken to people who were previously in the Trade Department. I mean, I think it's often underreported how far along the negotiations were with the United States before Trump left office last time. If I were the UK government now, I would not stand on ceremony. I would hold my tongue and hold my pride and pick up those Tory negotiations and acknowledge that, yes, OK, most of that was done by Liz Truss, and say, OK, we can build on this, we can work on this, and get that trade deal done quickly. Otherwise, we could face pretty significant tariffs.
That would be nice. That would be nice. Though I do fear that that won't be what this Labour government does. And instead, they just pivot more to the European Union and try and get as close as possible to the single market and customs union.
The European Union, which doesn't make anything.
Yeah, but ideologically, ideologically, that would be easier for Keir Starmer and the Labour government, wouldn't it? But when I talked about Labour and its Trump problem, I also meant the fact that ministers can't seem to distance themselves from Lammy's comments and other comments from Wes Streeting and the others, all about Donald Trump. I mean, do you think Donald Trump would hold a grudge against someone calling him a KK Nazi sympathising bigot?
I think it would make things more difficult.
Perhaps it would make things a bit more difficult. Yes, we heard how Donald Trump spoke about Oprah, his old friend.
I just think looking at the global sort of interconnected economy as things are now, what do we need more than anything else at this time? Energy. Where do we get our natural gas from? It's not from Europe. Europe doesn't produce anywhere near enough natural gas. It can't produce it for itself. I mean, Norway's just about the only country that digs any oil or gas at all. And of course, the European continent in the main has banned fracking. We used to get it all from Russia. We can't do that now. The United States, thank goodness, stepped up in the last decade or so. But that's all going to become more expensive if these general tariffs
And we just tax anyone till the pips squeak, don't we, if they try and do anything about it in this country?
Oh, yeah, well, we don't just tax the things. We've also banned new exploration in the North Sea. We've banned fracking, even though we sit on a wealth of natural gas in this country. And now it's going to become more expensive to import it, even from allies. I mean, it's not hard to work out why we're poor.
You're going to up sticks and head to the bright lights of America.
Don't tempt
the
me.
land of the free.
Don't
who can
tempt
drill,
me.
baby, drill over there, Tom, till your heart's content.
Do you know one of the nicest things? Genuinely one of the nicest things. I was in the States over the summer, and in most hotels I've stayed at in the UK, you know, you leave the room and the lights go off. They don't worry about that in the United States. They just don't worry. They're energy rich. The lights stay on, and they don't feel guilty about it.
Tell Ed Mill about that one. Wonder how that would go down.
Well, we can't do. Well, we won't be able.
He'll have you boiling your kettle at midnight.
We won't be able to tell Ed Miliband because we'll have to turn off the telephone at certain points of day when the peak energy demand hits.
Right, now Tatiana has been waiting for far too long. Shall we get to the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez?
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. The top stories. Well, the interest rate's been cut by 0.25 percentage points, only the second reduction in almost 4 years. The Bank of England cut the interest rate from 5% to 4.75%. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says we need to make sure inflation stays close to target, so we can't cut interest rates too quickly or by too much. The bank cut rates for the first time in August when inflation fell to its 2% target. It was then held in September, as the bank wanted to see further evidence that inflation would be sustainably lower. We now know that the pound got a boost after that interest rate was cut to 4.75% today. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said with interest rates on a downward path, she said the Labour government is a world away from the last Parliament.
It's welcome news for millions of homeowners and businesses that interest rates have been cut today to 4.75%. I do, though, recognise that for many people who took out mortgages a few years ago, they're still looking at higher rates because of the spike in interest rates after the Conservative mini-budget 2 years ago.
Cheshire Police says MP Mike Amesbury has been charged with assault following an incident in Frodsham. A video had emerged of him appearing to punch a man to the ground. According to police, the 55-year-old is set to appear in Magistrates' Court at a later date. The charge relates to reports of an assault, they say, on a 45-year-old man in Frodsham, which was reported to police on the 26th of October. Sir Keir Starmer is set to sign a deal with Balkan nations to target people smuggling gangs as he heads to Hungary for the 5th EU summit. 46 European leaders will discuss issues including economic security as well as migration concerns. The Prime Minister will announce new UK plans to clamp down on organised immigration crime abroad by signing new agreements with Serbia, North Macedonia and Kosovo. Meanwhile, the summit will also address Donald Trump's win as the bloc focuses on how to accommodate the country's 47th president. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride praised the special relationship between the UK and the US, and he also told GB News the government need to take defence spending more seriously.
Definitely in an era now where the peace dividend that we had after the end of the Cold War has sadly come to an end, and we're in much more dangerous territory. You can see that around the world, not just with Ukraine and Russia, but where China is in respect of Taiwan and North Korea and Iran and so on. And what we therefore need to do is to make sure we have that strong commitment to defence. Now, as a party, of course, we set out a clear path to increasing our expenditure on defence to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And what we really need to see from this government is a similar clarity of commitment.
Kamala Harris has vowed to keep fighting following her election defeat to Donald Trump as she addressed crowds in Washington, D.C.
The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for. But hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright.
This comes as President Joe Biden paid tribute to Kamala, describing her as a tremendous partner full of integrity. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's team celebrated through the night after what's being described as the greatest comeback in political history.
Everybody, and it was beautiful. It was a historic realignment, uniting citizens of all backgrounds around a common core of common sense. You know, we're the party of common sense.
Sir Keir Starmer's telephoned Donald Trump to offer what Downing Street describes as hearty congratulations for his win. Sir Keir said he looked forward to working closely with the president-elect across all areas of the special relationship. The Prime Minister also reflected on the crisis in the Middle East and underscored the need for regional stability. And the UK has announced 56 new sanctions against Russia, including against Salisbury poisoning suspect Denis Sergeev. It's the biggest Russia sanctions package for 18 months in a signal of support for Ukraine. The Foreign Office says the sanctions will directly target the supply of goods to Russia's military and constrain vital resources crucial to conduct Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More news from me in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:09.
And Sir Keir Starmer, he's in Budapest today for the European Community Summit. He's expected to sign deals with several Balkan countries as part of his plans to smash the gangs.
But it all comes, of course, and is rather overshadowed by goings on the other side of the Atlantic this week. Yes, the leaders of Europe need to digest the news that Donald Trump will soon be returning to the White House. What could that mean for the European continent?
I imagine it means more Europe.
Well, that is often the answer that European elites try and come up with. But let's go to Budapest and speak with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, of course, we've seen the arrivals of these world leaders, but whatever the agenda was, whatever they've been specifically sort of convened to talk about, it's going to be Trump, isn't it?
Good afternoon, Tom and Emily. Yes, of course. It is going to be Trump, because that news that lots of people were not expecting, that phenomenal victory, is reshaping politics around the globe, basically. And it's very sunny here, but the atmosphere less sunny, because now Viktor Orban, the leader of Hungary, where we are here in Budapest, is delighted with the Trump victory, but safe to say that the majority of European leaders are not, despite all the warm words, despite all the phone calls to Trump, despite all the very public congratulations. They are talking here, yes, as they were always going to do, about shared challenges, about security, about defence, about trade, but all now seen through the prism of this impending presidency of Trump again, and all the things that he said, and they are wondering which of the things he said he's actually going to do, because he's threatened big tariffs on countries importing goods into the States. If he follows through on that, could have a very serious effect on the global economy and on growth here in Europe. And also, of course, on European security, because he's previously said that if he came in, he would end the Ukraine war in one day, he said. What does that mean? It's been suggested that he might say, look, you've got to just accept the borders as they are now. Russia gets to keep what they've got. That's obviously incredibly worrying to Ukraine, but this conflict will have to end at some point. So I think it is a bit of a tipping point, and also, of course, Europe for many, many years simply hasn't been paying its way on defence. We heard Ben Wallace there speaking about the sort of peace premium that is well and truly over. Europe realising that it has to stand on its own 2 feet, and it has to pay its way too.
OK, well, Catherine Forster, thank you very much indeed for bringing us that update from Budapest. For more reaction, we're now also going to turn to GBNews Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, thank you. We know what Donald Trump's plans are, mass deportations and also continuing to build the Trump wall on the border. What are Starmer's new plans on migration, then, when it comes to speaking to European leaders?
Well, so Keir Starmer is going to continue to hammer home that message of going after the criminal networks involved in people smuggling, smashing the gangs, as is his mantra. And he wants to ensure that other European countries see the real threat that there is out there from mass illegal migration into the borders of the European Union. And that's why, of course, he's signing this deal with a number of those Balkan countries in particular, because that's one of the main routes into the European Union. We know, of course, that there are these routes across the Mediterranean that we've known about for a long time. They get a lot of the publicity, the boats that come across from North Africa and into the likes of Lampedusa in Italy and some of the Spanish islands as well. But in addition to that, there is the Balkan route, where many come from Turkey, mainland Europe routes into, in particular, heading for the likes of Northern Europe. So what Sir Keir Starmer wants out of this really is a sort of an agreement whereby the Balkan countries in question will work more closely with the UK, with their criminal investigation teams, allow the UK to take the lead on some of these investigations as well. This is how Sir Keir Starmer sees the UK as being able to make a difference in going after the criminal gangs. But really, I think Sir Keir Starmer will have a tough time trying to get a wider discussion on the immigration crisis at the moment, given that everybody, understandably, is going to be so obsessed with the result of the US election and what the potential ramifications, particularly security-wise, for Europe is going to be in a second Trump presidency.
Mark, just spitballing here, but of course, the United States has seen significant immigration from South America, but also from other parts of the world, from from East Asia and that sort of corner of the world. If the United States genuinely does seal its borders to a much greater degree than we've seen in recent years, could Europe actually expect a far higher percentage of these people that, instead of travelling to the United States, now set Europe for their destination?
Well, it's certainly possible. I mean, many people from all around the world go to the US anyway. It is an immigrant country, and they welcome people continuing to come to the US from overseas as long as they do it legitimately. But the real concern has been, of course, that we have seen many thousands running into the millions of people that have spilled over from the southern border from Mexico into the US. And you're right, they're not just people from Latin America. They are people from all over the world that see this now as an easy route into the US without having to go through the proper channels and potentially being turned down.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor. Clive's been in touch, saying the government's attending more EU meetings than we did as members. And it is true.
No, he's wrong. He's wrong. It's not an EU. It's not an EU meeting.
I know, but you know, it's with the EU leaders mostly, isn't it?
Well, but this is the EU is 27 countries. This is 50.
I know this is the European.
Countries.
Clive knows this too. Clive knows. He knows it's not the EU as such. But it is true that Keir Starmer. Well, he hosted the European political community here, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's also visited Brussels a number of times.
Yes.
He's also off in Budapest. He's had huge amounts of bilateral meetings with European Union leaders. You know, is there a theme here?
I'd say half of that is completely legitimate. It was very weird to see David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, attend a foreign ministers' meeting of EU foreign ministers. I mean, that's a strange thing for him to do because we're not a member of the European Union. But we are a member of the EPC, which is just a forum for discussion. It's not a sort of executive body. It can't compel members to do things. So I think we should be a lot more relaxed about the Prime Minister going to meetings like this.
Priorities. Anyway, the Prime Minister is trying to rebuild relations with Donald Trump, apparently. David Lammy's position as Foreign Secretary could be under threat after he called the President-elect a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath. To be fair, that was a few years ago.
Well, these comments now put pressure on the UK-US special relationship, but Downing Street says he'll stay, that is, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, will stay in his position until at least the next election.
Well, joining us now is our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, does David Lammy need to get the chop?
Morning, both. Back to the our office, our base here in the QT Centre in London. I don't think so. I think the problem that Keir Starmer's got is if he were to take action and move David Lammy, then the left would pile in saying he was Trump's poodle, and that was of course the language used to describe Tony Blair with George W. Bush back in the early part of this century. So it would look too obvious. I think you might see influence being held in the appointment or not of who the replacement is for Dame Karen Pierce, who's the UK ambassador, who may now get an extended period there because she was credited for arranging that dinner between Starmer and David Lammy, in fact, and Donald Trump in Trump Tower when I was over there for GBNews and the UN General Assembly. But joining me now in the studio here in Westminster is a veteran Labour MP, Bill Esterson, who is the chair of the Energy Committee. What's your take on this issue of some of your colleagues who made some quite fruity remarks about Donald Trump in the past? Should they apologise? Is Trump got a thick skin?
Well, I think Trump's definitely got a thick skin, but look, David Lammy was with Keir at the dinner that they had with Donald Trump a few months ago, and clearly they're going to work together in the interests of both countries.
We're seeing those comments now on screen from David Lammy. I mean, it may be that, I mean, or not. It could be well be that he forgives and forgets. A liar and a coward saying that.
Well, we will work with the winner of the election, and that's in the interest of the UK as well as the US.
I'm fascinated by the reaction amongst Labour MPs to the Trump victory. There's some speculation amongst MPs I'm speaking to in Parliament that there's an incumbency factor here, that incumbents just don't seem to last the pace anymore in the nature of the pressure from 24/7 social media coverage. I mean, do you think that looking at the narrow, the thin nature of the majority you won back in July means there could be a problem here for Labour too in the next election?
I think when whoever's in government and whenever they're in government, you have to deliver on the priorities of the people who elect you, and our successor otherwise will depend on whether they feel they're better off after 4 or 5 years. You know, we've got to get waiting lists down in the NHS. We've got to make sure people can see their GP and get a dental appointment, crucially. We've got to ensure people have got jobs. I was at Peel Ports, just outside my constituency, on Friday, talking to apprentices there who've got fantastic new jobs in the renewable...
That's in Liverpool, isn't it?
It is, yeah, in the renewable energy sector, which is obviously part of my select committee brief, and they're looking to the future and the opportunities that provides. And, of course, we've got very good news today with the interest rate fall, which is an endorsement of Rachel Reeves' budget last week. It means people's mortgages are going to fall, so that's good news. And I think if we can build on that, on those sorts of indicators and deliver to those priorities, then we stand every chance of getting a second term. But we've got a lot of work to do, and this is why Keir is making it very clear that his priority is fixing the foundations. That's the phrase that has underpinned not just the budget, but our whole agenda.
But growth is anemic, according to the OBR, and the concern is that despite all the money being spent, the taxes being raised last week, if growth doesn't pick up, then people look round and say, well, you know, isn't Kevin Badenoch a better bet in 2028, 2029?
Well, the Labour government has inherited a very difficult position where there is an in-year gap, and the Chancellor set out the gap of the figures which demonstrate why it is £22 billion alongside the budget last week, and fixing that gap and delivering growth by making long-term investment was a very significant challenge. And I think she rose to the challenge with that budget, which the interest rate cut shows has had endorsement from the markets today. So if we can deliver that agenda, I think we'll be in good shape.
OK, well, Bill Aston there with his take on the cut in interest rate this morning, and also kind of relaxed about the Trump win over in the States.
Well, let's hope Trump is as relaxed about this new Labour government over here. Christopher Hope and Bill Esterson, thank you very much indeed.
Yes, not everyone's been so relaxed, have they? Oh, we were showing earlier some of the reaction over in the States, some of those late-night talk shows.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you see our
Trump derangement?
Our US reporter, Stephen Edgington, who currently lives just outside Washington, D.C., when he got home after the win, he heard through one of his neighbour's doors in the block of flats he lives in, just screams after screams after screams.
No!
It was a difficult, trying time. But lots more coming up in today's programme. Of course, we're going to be live in Derbyshire, where Will Hollis is being entertained by a flock of sheep. You won't want to miss it.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
hello.
Really
Hey,
good to see you this
Thank
morning.
you for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some
Very
tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo. Just, you know, I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look,
You won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first.
Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour. So
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
No, it's salty, yeah.
It's
OK,
salty.
hang on, bit more.
OK.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. Cheese and onion.
Yes,
Salt
nailed
and
it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
Oh,
off.
you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 1, and as expected, at midday today, the Bank of England reduced interest rates from 5 to 4.75%.
Yes, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has been out and about reacting to the news. Here is what she had to say.
It's welcome news for millions of homeowners and businesses that interest rates have been cut today to 4.75%. I do, though, recognise that for many people who took out mortgages a few years ago, they're still looking at higher rates because of the spike in interest rates after the Conservative mini-budget 2 years ago.
Nice little dig at Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng there.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, of course, now we've seen with the US election, I mean, it wasn't just the UK that had high inflation and high interest rates.
They'd be at 2% if it weren't for Liz Truss. Yes, they'd be down at 1%. Your mortgage would only be 200 quid a month.
Oh, yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. Well, shall we get to the real world now and talk to our GB News reporter, Will Hollis? He's been speaking to farmers in Derbyshire.
Good stuff.
Take it away, Will.
Yes, well, this really is the real world. So real that we're right in amongst it at the end of an auction, which has just finished moments ago, where they're selling sheep from around the region here in Derbyshire. It's got that clean country smell that you don't get when you're in a studio or in London City. We're here because the Bank of England big number has come out, 5%. Now it's lowered to 4.75%. The Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, says that it's likely to come down again in the future if inflation stays below 2%. That's the magic number. When inflation is low, it means that the Bank of England can keep those interest rates low. And what does that mean to farmers? Well, we've got one right here, David Batterby, who's been selling some of his sheep here today, but also farms beef in the Peak District. First of all, how has the sales gone today? Did you do all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Probably a bit down on the week today, a little bit less than they were on Monday at the same market. But yeah, I was happy with mine today. But selling at an auction, unfortunately, you don't know what you get till you're here to sell.
And you never know what you're going to get with the interest rates until the Bank of England comes out with them. Less than 5% now, 4.75%. What does that mean to farmers like you?
I mean, that is better news, because obviously on the cost of borrowing we're lower, so we obviously finance a lot of machinery, mortgages, general cost of inputs will be hopefully low, but it's in the grand scheme of it, it's a splash in the pan, unfortunately, with obviously the recent on the budget, property relief on inheritance tax is just the bigger picture at the moment. It's crippling for farmers, certainly in small case farmers like myself.
Inheritance tax is really worrying people, and we've been hearing a lot about it on GB News. But just on the point about debt, and particularly mortgages, is that something that affects a lot of farmers around the country? Do a lot of farmers have debt, and so the interest rate will mean a lot to them? Oh,
hugely. I mean, even on smaller scale farm like us, we have about 150 to 200 breeding ewes and 150 cattle, and debt, yeah, I mean, everything's on finance, not everything, but large machinery. Some farmers are financing cattle to move forward, and also mortgages and land prices. It's just, we live in the world of debt, unfortunately.
It's not a little hobby where you put a bit of money across here, a bit of money there. It's a big game working in farming, is it?
Oh yeah, of course it is. And also, like I say, selling through auction markets like today, you're buying at a price, but you're selling it at an unknown price till you're here today. So I came with a trail load of sheep today. I don't know what I'm going home with. It's an auction. It's a live auction market. You just hope for a good market sale day you're selling, really.
And with inheritance tax, it's going to be 20% on inherited property less than, more than £1 million. What will that mean to you as a farmer in terms of what property you own or what you do as a farmer?
So we're mainly tenanted, so I obviously rent a lot of ground. I also rent a lot of ground on what we call grazing licences, so they're only yearly rollovers. Now, if a lot of my estates that we buy off, some are owned by business people, if they sell up, then I'll lose about 250 acre overnight.
There won't be anything left for you to rent. So even if you're not inheriting a property, the fact that there might not be any farms left in the future or fewer farms makes it harder for you. David Batterby, thank you so much for talking to us, especially on a busy day when you've come down here to sell the sheep. You've also spoken to GB News, and we've got a few more farmers waiting in the wings to speak to us throughout the afternoon, guys.
Oh, fantastic stuff. Thank you very much, Will. And please do say thank you to the farmers there in Derbyshire.
And
Good
to the
stuff.
sheep.
And to the sheep. Yes, don't forget the sheep. They have feelings too.
I think any piece to camera, any piece of reporting is immeasurably improved by the presence of dozens and dozens of sheep.
Yes, it's OK too also when there are a few dogs, like when I was in Stanley.
Absolutely. It lifted the show.
It lifted the show, yeah. Sometimes humans aren't enough, are they?
No, often they're too much.
Often they're too much. Some people prefer dogs to, humans.
I can really see why sometimes.
Yeah, let us know at home if you're one of those people, Scrap the children, prefer a bunch of cats.
Oh, no, not cats, dogs. Dogs.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. There's a lot going on over in Germany. What does it mean for us? The government close to collapse. We'll bring you the very latest.
Good afternoon. The top stories this hour. The interest rate's been cut by 0.25 percentage points, only the second reduction in almost 4 years. The Bank of England cut the interest rate from 5% to 4.75%. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says we need to make sure that inflation stays close to target so we can't cut interest rates too quickly or by too much. The bank cut rates for the first time in August when inflation fell to its 2% target. It was then held in September as the bank wanted to see further evidence that inflation would be sustainably lower. Well, the pound has got a boost after the interest rate was cut to 4.75% today. Cheshire Police says MP Mike Amesbury has been charged with assault following an incident in Frodsham. A video had emerged of him appearing to punch a man to the ground. According to police, the 55-year-old is set to appear in magistrates' court at a later date. They say the charge relates to reports of an assault on a 45-year-old man in Frodsham, which was reported to police on the 26th of October. Well, Mike Amesbury has since said that he's continuing to cooperate with police after being summoned to court over a deeply regrettable incident, he says. And Sir Keir Starmer is set to sign a deal with Balkan nations to target people smuggling gangs as he heads to Hungary for the 5th EU summit. 46 European leaders will discuss issues including economic security as well as migration concerns. The Prime Minister will announce new UK plans to clamp down on organised immigration crime abroad by signing new agreements with Serbia, North Macedonia and Kosovo. Meanwhile, that summit will also address Donald Trump's win as the bloc focuses on how to accommodate the country's 47th president. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride praised that special relationship between the UK and the US, and he also told GB News the government needs to take defence spending much more seriously.
Definitely in an era now where the peace dividend that we had after the end of the Cold War has sadly come to an end, and we're in much more dangerous territory. You can see that around the world, not just with Ukraine or Russia, but where China is in respect of Taiwan and North Korea and Iran and so on. And what we therefore need to do is to make sure we have that strong commitment to defence. Now, as a party, of course, we set out a clear path to increasing our expenditure on defence to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And what we really need to see from this government is a similar clarity of commitment.
And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More news from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some bright spells out there today, but for most it's another gloomy afternoon with some patchy drizzle, especially across Western Hills, where there'll also be hill fog. We've got high pressure, but that high sitting to the east, and a southerly wind is bringing, again, extensive low cloud and some dreary conditions. But for parts of North Devon, North and West Wales, Northern Scotland, perhaps South East Scotland, the cloud will be broken up by the hills, and as a result we'll see some sunshine making an appearance, especially northern Scotland, and where that happens temperatures could reach 18 Celsius. Otherwise, under the cloud we're going to see temperatures of 13 to 15 Celsius generally. The most reliable bright spots and clear spells as we go into the evening will be northern Scotland. Otherwise, a lot of cloud covering the hills across Scotland itself, some drizzle out there. Likewise for Northern Ireland and Northern England. A hole in the cloud, perhaps making an appearance at times for North and West Wales, as well as the north coast of Devon and Cornwall. But for most, it is, again, a cloudy start to the night, and as a result, a relatively mild night. Now, we're going to see the cloud come and go for northern Scotland overnight. A few frost and fog patches where we get clear spells, but for the vast majority, a grey start to Friday and a mild start with temperatures in the mid to high single figures. Some patchy rain making an appearance into the far northwest of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well as we begin Friday. A strengthening breeze in the west, that breeze coming from the south and southeast. So again, a few holes in the cloud for North Wales, Northern England and Northern Scotland as well. And on the whole, it's going to feel a bit colder compared with Thursday, with temperatures of 10 to 13 Celsius. But again, mid-teens where we get some sunshine.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello to you. I'm Jules Buckley. Still issues this lunchtime in Lancashire, where the southbound side of the M6 is still closed from junction 33 down to 32. Past Garstang down towards the M55 turn-off. Long queues for emergency repairs. We're seeing queues through the A6 through Hollins Lane if you're heading towards K-Bus as well in Cadderall as traffic diverts. Northbound open with a lane shut, southbound closed. Southbound M1 Nottingham 26 down towards 25, a lane out for a broken down car. There's roadworks there too, so slow going. There's one as well northbound on the M1, Flitwick at 12 to Bedford 13, that's heavy. And the eastbound M27 in Hampshire, Eastleigh at 5 through towards Hedge End at 7 in the roadworks. There's a breakdown, a lane closed, adding to delays there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 39 minutes past 1, and the German government has collapsed.
Yes, Chancellor Olaf Scholz has called for a vote of confidence in his government after firing the coalition's minister.
Well, there had been long-standing stalemate over next year's budget, and now there could be fresh elections sooner than anyone thought.
OK, well, joining us now is Editor-in-Chief at NIUS, Julian Reichelt. Julian, thank you very much indeed for joining us. So tell us, what exactly is happening? What's happening in Germany? What are people worried about? Just give us an idea of the landscape.
Well, I think the last time I was on your program, I told you that your Prime Minister Keir Starmer wouldn't need to remember Olaf Scholz's name because he wouldn't be in power long enough, and that's exactly what's happening now. So the German government, the German administration, this bizarre coalition of Social Democrats, Greens, and the Liberal Party, which is way more pro-business and anti-spending, has collapsed. The German Chancellor has fired his finance minister, Christian Lindner, over a dispute that has been going on for weeks now. It has been clear for weeks that these three parties don't really fit together, don't want to work together anymore. Christian Lindner came up with a paper demanding whole new policies, especially on the economy, policies that were completely against the big spending ideas of the Social Democrats. and the Green Party. Now, in Germany, we have a peculiar thing which is called the debt brake. It is in our constitution, and it's there to prevent left parties of all colors to go mad on spending and to go mad on the debt. That is what Olaf Scholz demanded from the finance minister to get rid of so that he could spend more money, presumably on Ukraine. Christian Lindner said he wouldn't have it. And that's when Olaf Scholz, in quite a dramatic fashion, fired his finance minister. He then went on to give a spectacular press conference that was like a divorce story straight out of one of the many great tabloids you have there in Britain. People saying bad stuff about each other. Olaf Scholz going after his finance minister, Christian Lindner, both parties accusing each other of arson, putting the country on fire. It ended in a spectacular fashion. And the mood here right now is, I would say, many people are relieved because disagreement with this administration is at record levels that we have never seen in Germany. 70-80% of the government disagree with this government. People who say this government has been doing a good job are at 1%. So most people are just relieved that it's over. Now the big question is, when can we go to the polls? Most people would love to do that tomorrow. Chancellor Scholz apparently wants to spend Christmas and the New Year as a proper Bundeskanzler, as a proper chancellor. So he only wants to call the vote for confidence in January. No one understands why only in January. So everyone is now pushing for an earlier vote so that we can, vote at the beginning of the year and not only in March or April. It really has been the most amazing weeks I've ever witnessed in politics.
Classic politicians, they just want to get into the next calendar year. So on their Wikipedia page, it shows that he was Chancellor for a whole extra year, even if it was just one extra day. It's all about that epitaph, that date. Oh, I'm 100% sure that's true.
Wow.
Who wants to be Prime Minister from, 2016 to 2019, when you could be 2016 to 2020? Yeah. Sounds so much more impressive. But Julian, this is, of course, it brings home the real trouble that Germany and many other countries are in. Economic growth in Germany has been very, very weak, weaker than the United Kingdom. Energy is very, very expensive, the most expensive now in Europe, at least on one day last week. I mean, tell us about some of these real economic problems that Germany is going through.
Olaf Scholz is leaving behind a legacy of completely, utterly failed politics. He bet all on the big green transition. That's what he promised his other coalition partner, the Green Party. He abandoned nuclear power. He banned the combustion engine, the #1 technology that made Germany as wealthy as we still are, I would say. And he drove Germany straight into recession, into a recession that we've never seen as bad. Industry production is down double digits in Germany. Now, the Green Party is, claiming that to be a success because we're now producing less carbon dioxide. But the reason is not, great climate policies. The reason is the collapse of our beautiful industry. That is what's going on. He has done a terrible job on migration. The borders are wide open. As we speak, young male people from the Islamist parts of the world are coming into Germany. We have seen horrible crime. We have seen the worst spike in crime driven by migration that we have ever seen in Germany. Olaf Scholz, and I think that is why he was so mad yesterday when he gave that press conference and why it really sounded like a disappointed, disgruntled former mob boss talking about his finance minister. I think it was that moment of realization when he knew his place in the history books of Germany will not be very favorable. That's when he was really saying.
And Julian, just because we don't have much time, Julian, I just want to ask you, we've got a left-wing government. The Labour Party are in government now. This coalition, this sort of left-wing liberal coalition in Germany doesn't seem to be going down very well. What do you think Germans will decide come the next election?
It's very clear what they will decide, what they will vote. All the polls tell you they will vote a center-right and a even more to the right party. roughly 60% will vote for the CDU, the classic conservatives, and the AfD, which are the right-wing party. So you have a vast majority for more energy and less migration.
But Julian, those parties will never go into coalition together, will they? The CDU will never go with the AfD.
There is a so-called firewall, which basically is a left concept put on the right to prevent them from forming a coalition. So the country will vote vastly to the right of center, but in the end, they will end up with even more left politics, and that will not go well.
Oh dear. OK, well, that could get very tense. Julian Reichelt, thank you very much for coming on the show. Always great to get your view on all this.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
I mean, it really makes British politics look boring.
It really echoes what's going on in America as well, doesn't it? I mean, like, we like to have this sort of parochial view that we've uniquely had a cost of living crisis, that uniquely in the United Kingdom things have been really shoddy the last couple of years. But it's true in Germany as well. It's felt in America as well. It's felt right around the world. There are going to be elections next year in Canada. And Trudeau is 20 points behind in the polls. He's going to be turfed out just in the same way that Joe Biden's party was, just in the same way that Rishi Sunak was, just in the same way that Olaf Scholz's party
Could we end up being a bit of an outlier in this country with a left-wing, socialist-type government if people are shifting away from their incumbents? We'll see. We shall see. It could get very interesting.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come in today's programme. Indeed, a village in Worcestershire has come together to do something extra special for the remembrance period. Join us later to find out what.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, let's speak now to Sales Director at Savills for Quinta Properties, Raquel Santos, who is live for us in Portugal. Raquel, good to see you this morning. Why are all these celebrities flocking to Portugal all of a sudden?
Yeah, I guess it's just because of basically the great lifestyle that we have, security, Portugal has kind of been a hidden, tucked away gem for quite a while that people didn't realize existed. And with the international flights that with the American flights coming in, it's kind of been put back on the map as a country that's worth visiting and worth investing in due to the secure investments that we offer in real estate.
Raquel, is it anything to do with tax rates? Because I think capital gains tax is, I think if it's over a certain amount, you pay half of your rate, which is 28%. Capital gains on shares and cryptocurrencies is 0. Is it anything to do with that? Because over here in the UK, big storm at the moment about millionaires apparently leaving in exodus because of the mooted increases in taxes in just a few weeks.
Yes, so obviously the alterations that are happening with the UK in terms of the tax that's being implemented on the capital gains, as you mentioned, we've definitely noticed has become a big drive, mostly on the vendor side as well, who are looking to sell because they don't want to be hit, with these higher capital gains, which is close to coming into effect.
Raquel, have you noticed then millionaires, high net worth people from the UK getting in touch with you looking to relocate?
Definitely. It's for multiple reasons, obviously, the changes that are due to come into place, obviously, and Portugal just seems to be a safe option always when things do kind of change. People opt to come into Portugal because we're quite steady, we're quite stable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 to 2, and a village in Worcestershire has come together to do something extra special for the remembrance period.
Yes, thousands of poppies have been knitted by volunteers and hung 70 feet from the church tower in Inkborough, attracting visitors from all over the country.
Well, our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson has been to meet those behind this masterpiece.
A sea of red sits on the horizon in this small Worcestershire village, draping the tower of this centuries-old church. In Inkborough, more than 200 people have come together to remember those who have fallen by knitting more than 6,200 poppies. The project came to life thanks to Tina Hill and Melanie Hart from the local Women's Institute, who asked people of all ages to help create the cascade. Melanie says it was emotional when the poppies were lifted into the air.
I was rather overwhelmed, actually. I don't think I had a dry eye all day for that day that it went up. As it went up, a silence went among the crowd that were watching it. It was just so poignant and so beautiful. We wanted to have the act of remembrance, but also we wanted to create a community project. So many people within the village and surrounding villages became involved with it. An elderly lady in the village, 92, I think she might be 93 now, she came along and sewed some poppies on as well. At the end of the day, we are remembering our fallen so that we can live with the freedom that we've got today.
All around this village are signs of remembrance and reminders of those who grew up here and sacrificed their lives in war. For Knitter and Women's Institute member Sheila Williams, there's been a lot of excitement at what's been achieved.
Very proud indeed. We all got so excited. We've done 2,000, we've done 3,000. How many have we done now? Done 4,000, and it's just been exciting. My grandfather was killed in the First World War, and every Remembrance November I always think of him, and I did it mainly for him, but for all the other souls that were killed in conflict.
Once the poppies began to hang from the church tower, it wasn't just locals who wanted to see this 70-foot artwork.
We've been blown away by the interest that we've had. We just haven't been able to keep up with the cakes and coffee sometimes. People have come from as far as Devon and a little bit closer to home, Malvern, Cheltenham, that sort of area. So, yeah, we're just overwhelmed by the support and the interest that we've had.
This week, the country will come together to remember. But in Worcestershire, the act of remembrance has made this community even more tight-knit. Jack Carson, GB News.
What a lovely thing to do.
Absolutely.
I love the English countryside.
And I love the architecture as well. I mean, the knitted poppies are lovely, but if they weren't off a tremendous, historic building, it would look slightly different, wouldn't it? But
what if it was just on, an East End council estate?
If it was on some concrete
it'd be moving in a different way, wouldn't it? Lots of you have actually been very interested in the German government collapsing. Hans has got in touch and you say the German government has collapsed due to immigration and green policies. This government needs to wake up here. Philip, you're not too sure that Starmer's going to get a good deal with Trump. He says Trump's a businessman. Starmer will be out of his depth when they try to get a good trade deal. Anyone at the age of 78 who can get up from the floor after being shot is someone to be reckoned with. Yes, that's a pretty good point, to be fair.
I don't like this whole good deal, bad deal thing when it comes to trade. It's not a bad deal if we accept more American products into the UK. I mean, that's more choice for consumers. As long as you're not compelled to buy the things. I don't mind if everything produced in America should be legal to buy in the UK. Surely.
Well, you might get some environmentalists on the case.
Yeah, they'll say, we don't want American food. They'll say we don't want
chlorinated chicken.
Then don't buy it.
More chlorinated chicken.
Then don't buy it. Oh, well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We'll be having lots more to say about world affairs and things at home here too after the break.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Staying gloomy for the rest of today. Low cloud and drizzle extensively. Some brighter spells, mostly to the north and northwest of higher ground because of the wind direction. Technical term for this weather, anticyclonic gloom. That's where low cloud gets trapped under high pressure and it stays in the same place for days on end, and that is indeed what we're seeing, with very little sun strength this time of year to lift the cloud. So the cloudy skies continue into the evening and overnight. Some clear spells continuing across northern Scotland, perhaps North Wales. Where that happens, temperatures dipping close to freezing, a few fog patches, but otherwise it's grey skies remaining and lows of 7 to 9 Celsius. Some drizzle about first thing Friday, especially across western parts of the country. So Devon, Cornwall, Somerset, Wales. We'll see some hill fog and quite misty conditions in places. But the overcast skies continue effectively for much of the country. A few brighter spells there for northern parts of Northern Ireland and more especially northern Scotland. 1 or 2 fog patches in the glens, but they'll lift soon enough. And actually it's northern Scotland where we'll see the lowest temperatures first thing and then the highest temperatures by the afternoon because of the sunny skies. And we keep the sunshine there for northern Scotland for much of the day. We'll see some cloud breaks developing across northern England, southern Scotland, North Wales once again. But for the vast majority, we keep the low-lying cloud, and it's going to feel a bit colder, I think, compared with Thursday. So 10 to 13 Celsius, unless you get some sunshine, and then it's mid-teens. Into the evening, and it's more of the same effectively. One subtle difference is we'll see a bit more patchy rain arrive into the west, and actually we will see some rain crossing the country through the weekend, but that will clear the skies for Monday.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on.
You could win Christmas on us this year. There's cash, £20,025 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also £5,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got, in my opinion? The best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 7th of November. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Trump, the aftershocks. World leaders meet in Budapest today, where top of the agenda is responding to the unanticipated election of Donald Trump, as much of the political and media establishment goes into meltdown.
Donald Trump has won the 2024 election and he'll be president again for 4 more years, or 8, or 12, or whatever.
And today, the Bank of England announces it has voted for a second cut in interest rates from 5% to 4.75%. We'll be heading to Derbyshire to find out what it means for the pennies in your pocket.
And we'll catch up with our royal reporter in South Africa on the final day of Prince William's visit. Will the prince's brother lose his American green card under Trump's new government? I think it's fair to say not many people expected Donald Trump's victory.
Absolutely they did not, and particularly here in Europe, I would say. It seemed as though there was absolutely no clue that this would happen. I mean, we've all seen Roy Stewart's reaction. He put huge amounts of money, apparently, on Kamala winning. He was absolutely 100% sure that Kamala would win, and also win well, win big.
Which doesn't make any sense. Anyone that was actually looking at the data... we saw that Nate Silver, the psephologist in the United States, the sort of top pollster guy, he ran 80,000 simulations of the election, and in half of them, Trump won. In half of them, Kamala won. So, I mean, why are people surprised? This was a 50-50 outcome, and when you toss a coin, you shouldn't be shocked if you get heads, not tails.
Yeah, but Trump just goes against their very sensibilities. They can't understand why anyone would vote for that ghastly orange man, you know, the racist, the bigot, the hideous misogynist. Why would... no. It's just a repulsion, isn't it? And no understanding of the fact that many people would have just simply voted on the grounds of the economy's not doing that great, my grocery bills are really, really high and they didn't used to be, and also the border needs to be controlled. And Donald Trump, he understood immigration, inflation, right, I'm going to stick on those 2 messages and go hard. Whereas Kamala was all over the place. She was only confident on reproductive rights.
It takes a special level of, I think, privilege to sort of insulate yourself in terms of thinking the sanctity of democracy is what the forefront, you know, the culture in our politics, whether or not we use naughty words or indecent language, that's at the forefront. If that's the forefront of your mind as a voter, you're doing all right.
You're doing all right,
you know,
yes.
if you're not worrying about the cost of an egg.
Dozen eggs.
What are eggs kept in? What's the pot? Egg box?
Egg box? Tray.
Tray?
Tray of eggs.
You know, I've completely lost
You're so out of touch.
Well, do you know what? When I buy eggs, I do actually look at the price of the eggs, but I don't look at what the holder of what that weird cardboard.
Do you make
thing
sure
that
they're
holds
free
the eggs
range?
I try to do. I do the free range ones, but I often do the supermarket own brand free range eggs rather than the super duper sort of.
But I must just say, a few people have taken issue with you in the inbox about the whole trade with America and we should just accept any goods. People are worried about British farmers. You know, people are not buying enough British. They're being undercut by American imports and lesser standards. And, you know,
we should be absolutely proud of our farmers. Farmers in the UK should be able to slap a Union Jack on their products. No imports should be allowed to do that. And then if you know you can buy British, you've got the choice. You could buy something from America, but you know it wouldn't be British quality, or you can buy from your British farmer. That's the market. We should completely embrace that kind of competition. We should be absolutely stringent on labelling, and we should come down on a ton of bricks on a single seller.
You can see why farmers would be a bit worried, though, here.
But we should have competition.
You know, they're thinking that, you know, you're selling your chickens or your beef, and then American imports come in at half the price, and then you're suffering, aren't you?
I think people will know that if they're buying from a British farmer, they're buying quality. And I think people would do that. But people should also have the choice. I mean, let's not forget, we do import a majority of our food anyway.
Yeah, we do. We do. Anyway, gbnews.com/your say. Please do get in touch. Join the debate. Tell Tom if he's wrong or right. Why not? But it's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much. The top stories. Well, the interest rate's been cut by 0.25 percentage points, only the second reduction in almost 4 years. The Bank of England cut the interest rate from 5% to 4.75%. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says we need to make sure inflation stays close to target, so we can't cut interest rates too quickly or by too much. The bank cut rates for the first time in August when inflation fell to its 2% target. It was then held in September as the bank wanted to see further evidence that inflation would be sustainably lower. The pound got a boost today after interest rates were cut to that 4.75%. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said with interest rates on a downward path, the Labour government is a world away from the last Parliament.
It's welcome news for millions of homeowners and businesses that interest rates have been cut today to 4.75%. I do, though, recognise that for many people who took out mortgages a few years ago, they're still looking at higher rates because of the spike in interest rates after the Conservative mini-budget 2 years ago.
Cheshire Police says MP Mike Amesbury has been charged with common assault following an incident in Frodsham. A video had emerged of him appearing to punch a man to the ground on the street. According to police, the 55-year-old is set to appear in Magistrates' Court at a later date. They say the charge relates to reports of an assault on a 45-year-old man in Frodsham, which was reported to police on the 26th of October. Sir Keir Starmer is set to sign a deal with Balkan nations to target people smuggling gangs as he heads to Hungary for the 5th EU summit. 46 European leaders will discuss issues including economic security as well as migration concerns. The Prime Minister will announce new UK plans to clamp down on organised immigration crime abroad by signing new agreements with Serbia, North Macedonia and Kosovo. Meanwhile, the summit will also address Donald Trump's win as the bloc focuses on how to accommodate the country's 47th president. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride praised the special relationship between the UK and the US. He also told GBNews the government needs to take defence spending much more seriously.
Definitely in an era now where the peace dividend that we had after the end of the Cold War has sadly come to an end, and we're in much more dangerous territory. You can see that around the world, not just with Ukraine and Russia, but where China is in respect of Taiwan and North Korea and Iran and so on. And what we therefore need to do is to make sure we have that strong commitment to defence. Now, as a party, of course, we set out a clear path to increasing our expenditure on defence to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And what we really need to see from this government is a similar clarity of commitment.
Sir Keir Starmer has telephoned Donald Trump to offer what Downing Street described as hearty congratulations for his win. Sir Keir said he looked forward to working closely with the President-elect across all areas of their special relationship. The Prime Minister also reflected on the crisis in the Middle East and underscored the need for regional stability. And the UK has announced 56 new sanctions against Russia, including against Salisbury poisoning suspect Denis Sergeev. It's the biggest Russia sanctions package for 18 months, in a signal of support for Ukraine. The Foreign Office says the sanctions will directly target the supply of goods to Russia's military and constrain vital resources crucial to conduct Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll be back in half an hour.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 2:09 now. Sir Keir Starmer, he's in Budapest today for the European Community Summit. He's expected to sign some deals with several Balkan countries as part of his plans to smash the gangs.
Well, this comes as Europe continues to digest the news that Donald Trump will soon be returning to the White House and what that will mean for this continent.
Yes, it's very interesting, the different reactions from the different European leaders. But for more reaction, we can now speak to GB News Home and Security editor Mark White. Of course, there's a big political elephant in the room, which, of course, is Donald Trump's election in the United States. But what was on the agenda in terms of migration and what exactly is going to be agreed?
Well, as far as Sir Keir Starmer is concerned, he, of course, really wants this summit to focus on the issue of illegal migration. This is the government's Small Boats Week, but really it's a week in which we are just one small boatload away from 32,000 migrants having crossed illegally from France in small boats this year, compared with 29,437 the year before. So we're less than a fortnight after we overtook the number who'd crossed for the whole of last year. So far this year, we're now ticking up towards 32,000. More than 300 arrived yesterday. Today, again, another 100 have arrived, and our producer down in Kent saying there's every possibility that on the high tide, the evening tide, that more will come across because conditions are favourable in the channel at the moment. But it's not all via the sort of the channel, or at least the Mediterranean, from a European perspective, that Sir Keir Starmer is focused on as he tries to get them enthused about the message of going after the organised people smugglers and smashing the gangs. There are these land routes as well, particularly in through the Balkan routes, and that's why he's signing this deal with North Macedonia, Serbia and Kosovo, in the hope that they can strengthen the criminal investigations that take place to dismantle the people smugglers further uproot, to stop the people smugglers getting these migrants into Europe in the first place. But really, it's going to be so difficult, isn't it, to try to get minds focused on the concerns over migration when everyone at that summit will just want to focus on Donald Trump and what a new presidency from Donald Trump will mean, particularly for European security. To be a fly on the wall.
Yes, Mark. 32,000 you say we're just coming up to this year. How much is that costing the taxpayer? Do we know?
Well, billions. Around about 7 billion every year in accommodation alone. We know that it's about 7 to 8 million a day in hotel accommodation for these people when they come across, because they have to be housed somewhere, to the point, of course, where the government has had to put a rapid handbrake turn on its plans to end the use of hotels for migrants. They're now in negotiations with 2 more hotel chains to try to acquire more hotels to put these people coming across, because we have had a significant surge, and a surge that is going to continue probably at least by the end of this month, I would say, up to 35,000 and maybe 40,000 by the end of the year. That is a very significant number when you compare it to the 29,500 last year. Okay, not as many as the 45,000 the year before, which was an extraordinary year. But as I say, there's still the better part of 2 months to go. So who knows just how many more will come across. There are plenty waiting there. Our producer in Kent has told us, speaking to his contacts in France, that there are thousands of people not just lined up in northern France in the makeshift camps from Dunkirk down to Calais and even down to Boulogne, but further inland, where they wait until it's their turn to take a boat across to the UK, and then they're shipped to the coastline to meet up with that boat that usually comes in by road from Germany.
OK, well, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, thanks so much for talking through the European Political Community Summit there in Budapest.
It's very difficult, isn't it? We talk about cooperation, and of course this is a global issue and it's a European crisis for many countries, but countries will fundamentally act in their own interests, and they won't put British interests first when it comes to solving this crisis.
But
you know, if they can sort their border, great. They're not going to put all their resources into stopping the flow into our country, are they? In fact, that would be removing the problem from their shores.
Right, and also it does seem to be the case that we've elected a government that scrapped an offshore scheme with Rwanda just at the time that 15 European countries are looking at sort of this African processing scheme. Ursula von der Leyen's just got a second term secured as European Commission President. Her European party, the European People's Party, has been campaigning on issues like African country processing. Giorgia Meloni is doing her deal with Albania in terms of processing people there. And then you've got Viktor Orban, who's hosting this summit. He's not exactly a sort of wilting daisy on this issue either.
Well, he's just walls up, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's just walls up and, you know, control those borders at all costs. Anyway, in other news, America continues to digest Donald Trump's return to the White House.
Yes, after beating the Democratic candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris, his fans could be seen absolutely milking his victory. But the same couldn't be said for many US talk show hosts.
No, many struggled to hold back their emotions as they reacted to the election.
Donald Trump has won the 2024 election, and he'll be president again for 4 more years, or 8, or 12, or whatever. And this is cool. The first person convicted of felony charges to assume the presidency. So that's not bad. When I was in grade school, they always told us anyone could grow up to be president, but they didn't say literally anyone.
Jimmy, what are you doing?
I'm packing.
Packing? Are you going on vacation?
No, I'm not going on vacation. I'm leaving the country.
Why are you leaving the country?
I can't stay for another 4 years of this. Who knows what he's going to do?
If you watch the show regularly, I'm guessing you're not doing great. Yeah, me neither. Well, it happened. Again. After a bizarre and vicious campaign fueled by a desperate need not to go to jail, Donald Trump has won the 2024 election.
So there's the totally normal reaction from talk show host. But there's someone who's not one to hold back, and I guess that's my other half, GBNews presenter Patrick Christys. If you missed his reaction to the left's reaction on this side of the pond, here you go.
I've just drunk a pint of Rory Stewart's tears.
That's attractive.
Struggling to speak after that quick. Oh, goodness me. You okay there?
I can't control it. I can't control it. Anyway, joining us now is Max Young, a news editor at Guido Fawkes. Max, we were interested in an article on your website that had seen an email that went round at the Guardian newspaper headquarters, suggesting that people who were upset with the result could, have a 24/7 hotline for support and mental health support. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Catherine Viner, the editor-in-chief, sent round this email to all staff, which is the global staff. There are some around the place. They're not all in the UK. Basically saying this is a terrible result. Please show some support to your colleagues in America because they're going to be really feeling it. And if you need free counselling, that's on offer. There's a 24/7 online GP, mental health services, and a virtual well-being tool system that they can use for their mental health. So I don't know if GBNews offers the same service in reaction to the election. I'd be less surprised if Tom had to go to therapy after another housing project got blocked by NIMBYs, but we'll have to think about that.
I'm his therapist, Max.
Safely say I've been offered no therapy at all. Perhaps I should ask for some. But Max, this is strange, isn't it? That people are taking political results, even political results in foreign countries, not in sort of a rational or level-headed way about sort of thinking about the consequences, but in a deeply personal and emotional sense.
Exactly. I've been thinking about this morning. I think the analysis that it was 2016 what done it really, because these progressive types they had a threshold of right-wing events that they could deal with, but you had Trump and Brexit in the same year, and I think that blew the cap off, and it's stayed off since then. So it's all a highly emotional, existential struggle, and it shouldn't be, because I think that they're framing it that way, and that's not helping their reporting. And I think they're actually contributing to the kind of fantasies that the Harris campaign was relying on, and which ultimately let her entire team down. I mean, this election result wasn't entirely unexpected. the economic indicators, it was fairly clear that people weren't happy about what was going on under the Biden administration in the US economy. You know, you had to look at inflation. It topped 9% a year and a half into Biden's administration. And when Trump left his, it was hovering at about 1%. It was fine. And if you look at actually the bottom half, the bottom 50% of Americans' net household wealth, that shot up under Trump at a rate of 120%. Under Biden, it was only an 8% rise. So I think these are key indicators which people like Guardian hacks forget about, and they think about emotional things instead, which isn't helpful.
It's very interesting, and it's also the TikTok generation, isn't it? I mean, scrolling social media, you see, particularly, I will say, not to dub my own gender in, but you do see a lot of young women crying into their camera. So they've got their phone up here and they're just weeping, saying, oh, my God, I can't believe Trump's won. Convicted felon, racist, homophobe. And then that's it. It's all very narcissistic, isn't it?
Well, exactly. It's not just teenagers on TikTok. It's bloody Jimmy Kimmel had a cry on his show last night as well. I mean, they're all doing it. And they're holding this up as an example to kids. You know, you should have a breakdown if one of two political results is achieved in a closely fought race.
But there's a serious journalistic point to make here, which is that you can create a cogent argument against Donald Trump. Of course you can. You can have a rational discussion about whether whacking up tariffs against allies is a good thing. You can have a rational discussion about whether it's feasible to deport 10 million people. You can have a rational policy-based discussion on how he will act as president and what is just campaign rhetoric and what might actually happen. But you can't have that sort of rational, level-headed analysis of what might actually happen if you're too busy filling up with fantasies about, you know, Nazi politics or that Donald Trump is suddenly going to turn into Hitler or abolish elections. I mean, if you're in that realm of fantasy politics, you completely do a disservice to your audience and you miss the real issues at hand.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right. You know, fantasists live in a fantasy, and thankfully we have a free press, so people can go elsewhere to GBNews and Guido Fawkes for their rationed and reasonable discussion. I mean, let's just let them get on with it, and they'll see their readership decline, and we can continue producing the actual reasoned discussion and debate.
Oh, you say that, although I don't know. I mean, the views for CNN. The New York Times, they raked in more money under the last Trump presidency than they ever had done in their history. People love the outrage clicks. People love the sort of hyperbole, and perhaps rational argument has had its day.
Yes, The Guardian should actually be happy. They'll get so many clicks because every time Donald Trump says anything, it will be headline breaking. Max Young, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, news editor at Guido Fawkes. Yeah, that's absolutely... Yes, it's actually good for the mainstream media, isn't it?
Trump is box office.
Yeah. He's box office.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come in today's programme, including another tangential argument off the back of Donald Trump's election. You know that deal that the new government of the UK signed when it handed over the Chagos Islands, when it formally set the sun on the British Empire? Could that deal now be unwound? More of that after this.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's about for 3,000 miles?
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world, and the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the two of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer Trust supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rode it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions and we stood there at my porch and Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
Yeah, we've
GoFundMe
got
page
social
yet?
media platforms at
Right.
The Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
Fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel. If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past 2. Now, the Prime Minister is trying to rebuild relations with Donald Trump.
Yes, the Foreign Secretary's position, David Lammy that is under threat as he called the President-elect a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, and that was just for starters.
Totally normal. These comments could now put some pressure on the UK-US special relationship, but Downing Street says he'll stay in his position until at least the next election.
Well, it's also been reported that Donald Trump is set to stop Britain's deal to give away the Chagos Islands when he returns to the White House. That was following criticism, severe criticism, from Republicans on the Hill.
OK, well, joining us now is political editor Christopher Hope, our political editor Christopher Hope. Christopher, thank you very much for joining us on this one. Yes, so could it be that actually Donald Trump in the White House, this could mean that we get the Chagos Islands back?
Yeah, we still have them, of course, until the handover deal is signed, and it's not yet signed. So what happened here is the Truss government, the Tory government, started talks about handing over the Chagos Islands, the sovereignty of them, to Mauritius next door, because we'd lost, there was a vote in the UN, we lost that, we'd lost some court cases, and increasingly London felt it was impossible to hang on to it. At the heart of the problem, though, is Diego Garcia, this military base, which is a real, which the US want to hang on to, but under the deal we would give back control and sovereignty of the base after 100 years. Now, Joe Biden approved this deal, but there's rumblings, we think, that Donald Trump will not agree, and because the treaty is not yet signed, it won't be signed till early next year, it'll be on his watch when it finally gets done. So one person who's been taking up the fight on this issue and concerned about it is our colleague and the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, and I asked him last night on his show on GB News about the issue of the Chagos Islands.
All I can tell you is that I've spoken to people in the military here, I've spoken to people close to the incoming Trump administration, and there are deep concerns about a Mauritian government that is moving a long way to the left, that doesn't appear to like America very much, that is getting closer to China, even though it's not part officially of the Belt and Road Initiative. And it's all well and good saying there's a lease deal, but hey, we heard there was a lease deal on democracy in Hong Kong, and look what's happened to that. And I think this will be a source of great concern for the Americans. Would have been very difficult to do the Gulf War, very difficult to do the Iraq War without Diego Garcia. It is that and Guam are the only real assets America's got in that whole part of the world. It is something that is very important. It is something that will be discussed, obviously, and of course I have my own view on that.
Nigel Farage last night talking to GB News when I was presenting his show. Now, the deal was signed on October the 3rd. The Chagos Islands, I should say, there are a cluster of around 60 islands in the Indian Ocean. They are of vital geopolitical importance, and that's what Nigel Farage was alluding to, both the UK and the US. Now, there's a group called Chagosian Voices, and I've been in touch with them for your show, Tom and Emily. They are very keen to speak to Nigel Farage. They've released videos of people who were forcibly removed from those islands by the UK back in the late 60s. They all live around Gatwick area. They got off the plane and stayed in that area. They want to go back. And increasingly, I think their voice is the ones which might be heard more and more. And the reason why we don't have any debate on sovereignty over Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands is because the people living there don't want it. Well, the Chagosians who are removed from these islands also don't want to be removed from the islands by the UK, and it may just be they get their own way, because Nigel Farage knows the mind of Donald Trump more than most.
This is a fascinating issue, of course, because it was one of these early sort of giveaways that the new government sort of signed up to, perhaps thinking that actually this would help their relations with the United States. I mean, it did seem it was done in conjunction with the Democrat administration in the United States, involving this 100-year lease deal for the base, almost as if they were worried that the islands would be taken away at a UN level or something, so wanted to secure that base. But perhaps the new Trump administration cares less for advisory votes at the United Nations than the previous administration did. I mean, this really could change all of those assumptions.
Well, it's definitely up in the air, and it will need to be signed off by the new US president. He's due to be sworn as in that role on January the 20th, and after that, everything's in play. So I think the deal they agreed and announced on October the 3rd, before elections in Mauritius, which many attacked, particularly on the Tory side. Even though the Tory government started the talks, their contention is they never meant them to get anywhere. They did that almost to humour Mauritius and allow it to carry on and run into the sand, as it were. So no deal was expected. I mean, it looks, for many, giving away sovereignty over any parts of the world is contentious. And when you have a military base so important for refuelling nuclear submarines as much as anything else, UK nuclear submarines, that's why I think so many in Britain might support Trump if he vetoes this deal.
Thank you very much, Christopher Hope, our political editor. Very interesting. Would it be a bit embarrassing for Starmer and David Lammy if Donald Trump were to just say, nope, not happening?
Well, it's the bonkers thing about it all. Why would it be embarrassing for the British government to maintain British territory?
Because they said they're giving it away.
Why is that the embarrassing option here? I mean, I completely agree with you. It would be embarrassing for the government, but doesn't that just explain how through the looking glass we have got to now? Like, what a point we have reached as a country where the embarrassing option is maintaining your territorial integrity as a country, and the less embarrassing option is literally giving away territory. I mean, what?
How far we've fallen, Tommy. How far we've fallen. Well, at least we're here to bring you some positivity. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, not Miserable Afternoon Britain. Lots more coming up on today's show. Could Prince Harry be deported back to Britain? That's after the news.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Well, the top story, the interest rate's been cut by 0.25 percentage points, only the second reduction in almost 4 years. The Bank of England cut the interest rate from 5% to 4.75%. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says we need to make sure inflation stays close to target, so we can't cut interest rates too quickly or by too much. The bank cut rates for the first time in August when inflation fell to its 2% target. It was then held in September as the bank wanted to see further evidence that inflation would be sustainably lower. The pound got a boost today after that interest rate was cut to 4.75%. Cheshire Police says MP Mike Amesbury has been charged with assault following an incident in Frodsham. A video had emerged of him appearing to punch a man to the ground on the street. According to police, the 55-year-old is set to appear in Magistrates' Court at a later date. They say the charge relates to reports of an assault on a 45-year-old man in Frodsham, which was reported to police on the 26th of October. Well, Mike Amesbury has since said he's continuing to cooperate with police after being summoned to court over a deeply regrettable incident, he said. And Sir Keir Starmer is set to sign a deal with Balkan nations to target people smuggling gangs as he heads to Hungary for the 5th EU summit. 46 European leaders will discuss issues including economic security as well as migration concerns. The Prime Minister will announce new UK plans to clamp down on organised immigration crime abroad by signing new agreements with Serbia, North Macedonia and Kosovo. Meanwhile, that summit will also address Donald Trump's win as the bloc focuses on how to accommodate the country's 47th president. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Sophia Hill has your next update.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
And welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some bright spells out there today, but for most it's another gloomy afternoon with some patchy drizzle, especially across Western Hills, where there'll also be hill fog. We've got high pressure, but that high is sitting to the east, and a southerly wind is bringing, again, extensive low cloud and some dreary conditions. But for parts of North Devon, North and West Wales, Northern Scotland, perhaps South East Scotland, the cloud will be broken up by the hills, and as a result, we'll see some sunshine making an appearance, especially Northern Scotland. And where that happens, temperatures could reach 18 Celsius. Otherwise, under the cloud, we're going to see temperatures of 13 to 15 Celsius generally. The most reliable bright spots and clear spells as we go into the evening will be Northern Scotland. Otherwise, a lot of cloud covering the hills across Scotland itself, some drizzle out there. Likewise for Northern Ireland and Northern England. A hole in the cloud, perhaps making an appearance at times for North and West Wales, as well as the north coast of Devon and Cornwall. But for most, it is, again, a cloudy start to the night, and as a result, a relatively mild night. Now, we're going to see the cloud come and go for Northern Scotland overnight. A few frost and fog patches where we get clear spells, but for the vast majority, a grey start to Friday and a mild start with temperatures in the mid to high single figures. Some patchy rain making an appearance into the far northwest of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well as we begin Friday. A strengthening breeze in the west, that breeze coming from the south and southeast. So again, a few holes in the cloud for North Wales, Northern England and Northern Scotland as well. And on the whole, it's going to feel a bit colder compared with Thursday, with temperatures of 10 to 13 Celsius. But again, mid-teens where we get some sunshine.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, hello to you, I'm Jules Buckley. Still issues for the M6 this lunchtime. A lane shut in both directions still between Lancaster South and Garstang Junction 33 and the Broughton interchange. That's the M55 turn off at Junction 32. So big queues remain for emergency repairs. Follows a multi-vehicle collision from yesterday morning. It's very slow on the northbound M1, Flitwick to Bedford, Junction 12 to 13 at the moment. There was an earlier broken down car. That's now been dealt with, but still seeing queues back to Luton North 11A, London bound M1, Hemel Hempstead 8 to the M25 6A, lane 1's combed off, a collision causing queues, and issues in East Sussex for the A259, closed both ways from the Pevensey roundabout, that's the A27, to the Lamb Inn in Bexhill, closed and queuing there at the scene of an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 2. And of course, it's Martin Daubney next. But before we get to him, I've got a mea culpa.
He's actually got a mea culpa. This doesn't happen very often. Listen in. Buckle yourself in.
To be fair, I'm going to throw you in it as well, because we struggled at the top of the show to remember what the container for eggs was called. I was talking about inflation, and it's like how much it costs to buy a X of eggs. What is it? And we settled on box. But
I suggested this word, but it got dismissed. Got dismissed. Anyway, Angela's been in touch, and she says what? She says it's a...
Carton.
Carton of eggs.
Carton of eggs. Apparently that's... I mean, it doesn't sound... It sort of sounds right.
Carton of eggs? Carton of milk?
I think collectively we need a better word than carton or box. It's a specific sort of silly little sort of cardboard construction. Anyway...
There you go, anyway.
Just wanted to say, apparently the word's carton.
Carton of eggs.
There you go.
They're getting more expensive in the States.
Yeah, and everywhere else. But talking not solely about eggs, or perhaps not about eggs at all, it's Martin Daubney up at 3. Martin, what are you talking about today?
Eggs.
Well, you're a pair of good eggs, that's for sure. All went down the rabbit hole there. Good stuff. Look, the world is still spinning. Who'd have thought? 24 hours on from Donald Trump winning the presidency, and life goes on as normal. Today, I'm asking the big question, is the writing on the wall for woke? Donald Trump has promised to kick woke out of schools, out of colleges, out of the workplace, out of the military, and end net zero. We'll be having an anti-woke debate in the studio today, talking of which at 4 p.m. today, Joe Biden will address the nation in his acceptance speech, his loser speech. Will he be a sourpuss, a bad loser like Kamala Harris? And while on the point, I'll ask this, why are liberals so terrible at losing? The answer is they've always won everything in life. They haven't been conditioned to it like the working classes. And this Sunday, Remembrance Sunday, of course, a spate of pro-Palestine protests will take place in Birmingham, in Liverpool, in Bath, in Ireland, in support of fallen martyrs. I'll be joined by a former Special Forces operative who was shot in the brain, almost took his life on the Syrian border. He'll tell me why he thinks this is a gross affront and an assault to every veteran, and it should not be allowed to go ahead. That's all happening 3 till 6.
Do you know what, Martin? I'm glad you're having an anti-woke special today, because usually I watch your show and I'm just thinking, oh, what is this politically correct guff? You know? When is he going to be a bit anti-woke?
Fantastic stuff, Martin. We'll look forward to it at 3 o'clock.
Oh, it's going to be fun. Yeah. Anyway, as the new year is set to welcome a new president, the row over Prince Harry's US visa will be brought back into focus.
Earlier this year, Nigel Farage asked Donald Trump about this very issue. Let's take a listen.
No one knows the truth. What did he put on his American visa form?
If they know something about the drugs, and if he lied, they'll have to take appropriate action.
Appropriate action. What could that mean?
Well, the fractured relationship between the president-elect and the royal couple, or ex-royal couple, I should say, began in 2020 when the Sussexes urged American voters to stay clear of Trump, urging them to reject hate speech, misinformation and online negativity. OK, well, to break down this story for us, we're joined by royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, so what are the chances of Trump saying, you know what, Harry, time to get out of here?
I very strongly suspect that the new administration has other priorities, and also it wouldn't want the enormous amount of fuss. Can you just imagine it in hypothetical situations if it happened? I mean, we've seen Nigel Farage there get an answer from Donald Trump, which implied that this might be looked into, and it might, because the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing organization, has been trying to find out what Prince Harry put on his visa application, and did he admit that he took drugs? I mean, at the heart of this, and it's also unnecessary, at the heart of this was the fact that what Harry put in spare, some of this was absolutely extraordinary. And also what he discussed when he was giving interviews promoting the book. He talked about the effect different drugs had on him, and it simply was very unwise. One has to bear in mind, of course, that this is, he was taking them in the context of his mental issues and the trauma he'd faced after his mother's death. But equally, there was a lot in that book, this inclusive, that he should never have mentioned. I mean, talking to Dr. Gabor Mate, a very controversial figure, in some detail about the effect various drugs had on him. So he could hardly have expected nobody to attend to what he was saying and perhaps take it further.
No, it is fascinating, this issue, because the rules are very clear. And I think to most people watching and listening, they think, hang on, the Americans say that if you have taken illegal drugs, you're not allowed immigration status. Prince Harry, in his book, said he'd taken illegal drugs, and there he is with American immigration status. I mean, how do the two things make sense? Either he lied in the book, or he lied to the US government.
Well, discretion in this issue is apparently part of the so-called rules. I mean, the Biden administration didn't want to go into it. The judge dismissed the Heritage Foundation's request in September, but it is perfectly possible that it might be reopened. If it was, it would be very embarrassing, or could be, for the Sussexes, and we know that they and Donald Trump do not see eye to eye. He has called Meghan nasty. She called him misogynistic and divisive. The facts undoubtedly are that they were very careful. The elections just occurred, not to intervene in any sense other than to urge people to vote generally. But there's also no doubt that this is a pretty toxic issue. I can't see that the future administration would want to be involved with problems with the British royal family, which obviously would occur if this happened.
Yeah, that's true. Richard Fitzwilliams, thank you very much, as ever, royal commentator. Richard, you've started something in our inbox, Tom.
Oh, what have I started?
Yeah, so people don't believe that it's a carton. They say that's an American word.
Oh.
And everyone's saying it's actually a tray of eggs.
A tray? It's not a tray.
Melanie says it's a tray of eggs.
OK, here's what I think is a tray of eggs. You know, when you're in the supermarkets and it's sort of, you know, it's a foot or more wide, right? And it's a big sort of tray. That's a tray of eggs. But just a little, a six in a thing. I mean, what is it?
Maria's saying tray of eggs.
No, when it's six in insert adjective here, I don't.
David just calls it a six-pack, but I don't know if he's talking about, you know, beers.
Oh, you know what? I don't think there's a proper word for it.
No, I think we need to make one.
I'm not satisfied with box. Carton is American. Tray is peculiar. I mean, what can we get?
What can we get? Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain.
I'm just being told by one of our producers in our ear. Fortress. A fortress of eggs.
Yeah, I'll take it. Why not?
I mean, you could make I suppose. Now I want to bring in a little. I can just imagine all the papier-mâché and creating all the turrets. And no, I'm still not satisfied. I'm still not satisfied. But this show isn't mainly about eggs. I think we should probably stop talking about eggs.
It's also about lorries.
Yes.
What's the collective for lorries?
You can get a fleet of lorries.
A fleet of lorries. Yes. Are they ruining Britain? That's next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison-Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French.
We should.
Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. Kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low. So.
And it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered-down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes, and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 2:50. And now rural UK villages like Membury in Devon are experiencing issues with stranded heavy goods vehicles due to sat-nav errors, poor signage and confusing diversions.
Well, these lorries, often driven by foreign drivers, become stuck on narrow lanes, causing damage and local frustration. In response, the haulage firm Discordia is trialling a 25-kilometre geofence warning system to alert drivers and prevent further disruptions in the British countryside.
OK, well, joining us now to discuss this is van driver and owner of Judge International UK, Philip Judge. Oh, Philip, excellent. Thank you very much for positioning yourself right in front of your lorry there. Philip, so are lorries a menace in the countryside?
No, they're an absolute necessity, lorries are, for the countryside. As we well know, there's a lot of farm produce having to be moved around from fields to the cities. I think one of the biggest problems is on the roads around the rural areas at the moment is the actual building going on and new houses being built in structures which the roads simply can't take the extra traffic. So lorries are obviously competing or coming up against cars that are going to work in the morning, delivering stuff to building sites. You know, we've seen in one of our own villages, Morton in the Marsh, they're trying to get planning permission at the moment for 1,500 more houses, which is just going to cause absolute to build houses. Everything you own or anything you drink, eat, or anything else is moved by a lorry. So they are as a necessity. You know, it's important. You know, this is straw going to cows down in the West Country. We've got to go down narrow lanes. We've also got an added problem as well at the moment, is that the total lack of maintenance on our highways is becoming very apparent. A lot of signs are covered up for these foreign drivers by overgrown bushes and hedges. You know, there's been such a lack of investment for our roads for far too long in the UK. Lorries are no bigger, they're no wider. They're just having to compete with a lot more traffic and stuff. But
well,
you know,
isn't this one of the issues, Philip, that because we have roads that are so busy, there's traffic, there's often closures, then sat-navs take people on perhaps the faster route, the more windy route, the route that might be far less suitable to a lorry going down it, and then we get all of these instances where lorries get stuck. Perhaps people don't look at the height restrictions. You get all these sorts of issues.
100%. One of the biggest things I've been campaigning, I'm a member of the Road Haulage Association, very proud of an organisation. I've been maintaining for a long time that these foreign drivers are from very far away lands, obviously. They're not used to this hectic. I've driven all over the world, the Middle East. I used to drive to Russia. Let me tell you, the UK roads are equally as hardest roads to drive in the whole of the world. that sounds dramatic. but very, very true. Is the volumes of traffic, the narrow roads, we're competing. But a lot of these foreign guys are coming over. They're trying the hardest. You can't, they need to have a protocol and a leaflet in place in Dover where they're handed it in their language to say, look, this is what happens. This is what you need to call your customer or your client prior 1 hour to come and meet you, to lead you into your destinations, especially in tricky areas. It's a very old age. As professional drivers, the UK drivers, and I will say this, are some of the best in the world, obviously, we're always taught to if in doubt, stay out, you know, and get somebody to come.
I mean, Philip, I don't know how you do it, how you drive one of those. I mean, I find it hard enough driving a very small car. But yeah, keep up the good work. We'll have to leave it there. But Philip, Judge, good luck. We need to work together with lorry drivers, not against them.
OK, I've got 2 more ideas for eggs, right? Cathedral of eggs, because it's got the big, the towers inside it. Or punnet. How about punnet of eggs?
A punnet of eggs, like a punnet of strawberries.
For people that just tuned in, that would have been very odd. But this is Good Afternoon Britain. Martin's up next. Don't go anywhere.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. 1 entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly,